It is Super Tuesday, and we are all here gathered in Martinsburg, West Virginia for our first live event. We're in the actual Cast Brew Coffee building on the 3rd floor. We've got a great live audience with us today. And we're here to waste time and pretend like there's actually an election happening, because everybody knows Joe Biden's going to win all the Democrat primary, Donald Trump's going to win all the Republican primary. But I can't help but think there's something they're doing with Nikki Haley. They've got some kind of plan, maybe. I have no idea. I don't know what she's thinking is going to happen. And we're going to go track the exit polls and take a look at who won, I guess. I'll be honest, it's better than what these cable news networks are doing, where they're like, we're here to give you real-time results, as if there's an actual election happening. But hey, maybe we'll eat crow and Nikki Haley will somehow end up winning something. Sure. So we're going to talk about that. Plus, we've got other stories to talk about, of course, in politics. I think the exit polls are actually really interesting because what we are learning, immigration is the #1 issue for most people right now, overtaking the economy, which is actually kind of shocking. But I do think it's because immigration ties into the economy. So that would make sense. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into all the news, head over to go.goodranchers.com/Timcast and buy meat. You can choose a box, choose how often you want it. You get free delivery. And these are boxes full of meats. Goodranchers.com. Shout out. They've sponsored the show tonight, made all of this possible. And I got to be honest, we got a package delivered to try out. I tried it out. It was one of the best burgers I've had. Not kidding. We cooked it at home. It was American Wagyu. And oh man, I wish I could just eat like 27 of them every single day. The most important thing is Good Ranchers supported us, allowing us to do this show. So you guys support companies that support us. We have to build the parallel economy, and this is one company that's helping do it. So go to goodranchers.com. Get your meats. It's good. You need your protein. You got to eat more protein. But you can go to go.goodranchers.com/Timcast and pick up your meats, get them delivered to your house, and start eating better. Of course, you can always go to castbrew.com as well and buy our coffee. Let's see what we got. We're sold out of the whole bean. Appalachian Nights is just gone. Fortunately, for the people who are here right now at the event, you can buy some downstairs. For everybody else, pick up your Stand Your Ground. It's a medium roast. It's pretty good. And your Rise with Roberto Jr. When you buy this amazing Cast Brew coffee, we also sponsor Alex Stein's show. We're big fans. You help support the events that we're doing here as well and allow us to expand this operation. We're going to have more live events. Hopefully, we can do them once a month, but we'll see. We'll get into the groove. And also, go to timcast.com, click Join Us, because we are going to have a members-only uncensored show tonight, and this should be a whole lot of fun. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and everything else is Dave Smith.
What's up? How are you? Ladies and gentlemen, wonderful audience. It's good to be here. This is
Timcast is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
This is a big night for me. I put $100,000 on Nikki Haley to sweep. Listen,
the odds must be amazing.
I'm richer than Rogan if I win tonight. But fingers crossed.
Yeah, big one.
Yeah.
How many states are there in the Super Tuesday?
15.
15?
Yeah.
So you just got to get 15 out of 15?
All I got to get is 15 lucky breaks.
Now,
You had Haley for like a hot second in Vermont, but it switched back the other way.
A hot second. The funny thing is,
I can't go home to my wife tonight.
Yeah, put it all on the line.
There probably are betting odds for Nikki Haley to win. I'd imagine, right?
700,000 to 1 kind of crap.
Yeah, like insane odds.
I got to be honest. I don't know about $100,000, but like 10. Now that I think about it, like $10 on Haley to win, why not? If she does, you win $1 million.
I'm just saying, if you threw $10 down on Nikki Haley to win every single primary tonight, I genuinely think, Tim, if it hit, you must be worth more money than Elon Musk. Like, how would it not be? What odds would they give you?
You would bankrupt all of these.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, you'd get nothing because they'd all just go out of business. You'd be in litigation for years.
Yeah. And actually, to elaborate, I thought you were going to say, if you even placed $10 on Nikki Haley to win all these races, you're idiot.
Well, yes, that's true. I would also say that.
Yes. That's $10 you can buy a cheeseburger with. Otherwise, you throw it in the garbage. Dave, thanks for hanging out. We're going to have fun. We're going to make fun of Nikki Haley a lot, so that's going to be great. Libby's hanging out.
I'm hanging out. Glad to be here, you guys. This is really a lot of fun. Gotta love a live show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Santa Claus hanging out. Everyone clap whenever it's like, it's live. There's an audience.
Yeah, I'm so stoked to be. I can't talk at all.
Do it.
I'm so excited to be here. I cannot speak. Really great for my podcasting career. I think it's going to be a very quick night, and really it's just the time zones that are holding us up. So
That is what's going on. Like I'm
Yeah.
watching
Right.
this roll in on the New York Times. It's like, next
every-
up we're going to have Texas.
The
Texas is
entire
gonna be called
primary
soon.
so far has been like, all right, polls are open. Trump won.
Yep. Polls are
Like,
open. Trump.
because-
That's the
wait, how is that even possible that we know that already? They're like, numbers are overwhelming.
They called Iowa when it was at like 0.3.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Trump's
Maybe this
got
is
it.
good. The poll workers are like, finally, a night off early. We'll get out of here. We'll see you guys in
Look,
4 years.
We were planning on doing this Super Tuesday event a long time ago, and then Vivek dropped out, and then I was like, well, it's still DeSantis, and then he dropped out, and I was like, all right, I guess.
Yeah, we just called it Tuesday.
Ian's hanging out. Introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you guys. I don't know if we got a shot of this crowd yet, this beautiful, amazing crowd. Good to see you, Ian Crossland.
think-
I'm getting some feedback that there is a lot of echo on these
Yeah.
microphones. You may already know. I don't know
Because
if
we're in a
that's
big room
solvable
with,
or not.
with PA.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite moments from the night already was when one of the members of the audience asked Ian what his astrological sign was.
Yeah.
Dave Smith commented that you better be in for a long conversation. And then Ian asked which tropic
Yeah.
or something.
Tropical zodiac and the sidereal zodiac. They're different. The one's based off the stars, the position of the stars. That's the sidereal zodiac.
It was giving Tucker interviewing Putin, who was like, just give me 30 seconds to explain Russian
But
history.
let me start from the beginning, Hannah Claire, if you would.
Right, yeah.
I'm
In
just kidding.
2000 BC. All right, let's jump into the news. The big story right now, of course, is it is Super Tuesday, and we've already got a bunch of projected winners. Okay, so I'm not going to read any of them. I'm just going to say Biden won all of the Democrat ones already. And okay, there we go. Is there anything else to add to that? Is there anything? Does anybody
Good
want to
job.
Did
No, we
anyone-
don't really have much else
Did
there.
anyone bet on Dean Phillips? Do we think he's going to have like a breakthrough state tonight?
I
He's going to
didn't.
come through? Or
Nope.
is it just Nikki Haley
Who
who's
is
going
that
to make
guy?
you rich?
I don't know who Dean Phillips is. Who is
Dean
he?
Phillips was running
He's
for
a
a
congressman
second
from-
trying against Biden.
Yeah, he's a congressman from Minnesota, and he declared a run against Biden. He's running as a Democrat, and he said basically he's been positioning himself as a moderate, saying at one point he was saying maybe Nikki Haley will be my VP so we can have a unity ticket,
Okay.
which sounds terrible to me, but
Okay, Dave. All right. Nikki Haley is winning in Massachusetts with 0.1% reporting.
You're going to be so
all right,
rich.
this bet is looking good.
You're looking good.
Yeah.
so much
Four-
money.
Winning in
14 more to
Vermont,
go.
too.
Isn't it so funny too that she's lost everything except DC, which like if you were working for Trump's campaign, you'd be like, yeah, please give her DC.
Yeah.
like that couldn't paint a better narrative for our guy that everywhere in the country picks Trump except DC picks Nikki Haley.
I wouldn't be surprised if Trump people were whispering to DC Republicans like, vote for Nikki.
Oh yeah,
We want her to win DC.
because it just says it all.
Exactly.
By the way, it should be pointed out, I mentioned this before we started recording, but look, the DNC, which is the most corrupt organization in the universe, perhaps. We haven't explored the entire universe, but I think it's safe to say. They, by rigging the whole thing, really robbed us of what could have been a really interesting night if RFK was actually allowed to have a primary with Joe Biden and wasn't forced to go run independent. And I was very interested in RFK's campaign for a while before he went on his national give a hand job to every rabbi in the country tour. But at the time, nothing? I thought that was pretty good.
It was brilliant.
But I would just say they totally drove him out, and that would have actually been, this would have been a really interesting night if it was RFK versus Joe Biden and seeing where the chips fell on that one.
I think it might be still comparable to Nikki Haley.
Nah, it would have been not Nikki Haley. It would have been more than that. He was polling around 20 to 30% in a lot of polls, so he wouldn't have been like, I think he would have done something.
We have the Republican results map. This is going to shock all of you.
Is it really?
Trump has won every state so far.
Yep.
That's got enough that's in.
No, that can't be
and,
right.
And here's the best part. Okay, here's the best part. They actually have a color code for Haley and a color code for Trump.
Wait,
it would've-
why are they the same color?
No, they're different. They're different.
but they're too close.
But it just would have been so amazing if they did not include a color for Haley winning. And they were just like, if it's red, Trump won. Because, let's see, Idaho is in. Trump wins with 85%. Nevada, Trump wins with 99. Oh, I'm sorry. That's actually not from today. So we're still waiting on a bunch. What we have here are the results so far from all of these other states. So these aren't just now, but Haley's got nothing. I guess DC. Are they count? There you go. I guess they needed that color one time for Nikki Haley. She's got one. And look at this. Okay, so here we go. Virginia projected winner is Trump. North Carolina is Trump. And we're still waiting on the rest of the results where they will call it all for Donald Trump. And then we're going to pretend like we're surprised, I guess. So.
I really wish I had like an insider scoop from her war room right now of what state they're like, I really, really think we can get Colorado. Like, what state does Nikki Haley's team seriously think they could secure? And it's not even to be mean. Like, what are the odds here? So many states are backing Trump.
I think they could get Vermont.
You think you get Vermont?
But it also doesn't matter if you get Vermont.
Well,
they could potentially get Massachusetts, right?
So they're going to get the East Coast.
So they could get like a little New England, a little bit of New England. That's what they could get. But it also doesn't matter.
It's not enough. Nothing's going to turn the tide.
And I also don't think the goal of her campaign is to win. The goal of her campaign, I think, is to, pull support from Trump, pull money from Trump, and get in the way of a Trump landslide. I think that's the whole point.
I disagree with that. I mean,
you think she has a real point.
I think that the goal of the Nikki Haley campaign, and I think she's actually even made this quite clear, where she's kind of said the quiet part out loud. Like, didn't she say? I think over the last week she said, like, well, if there are going to be legal cases against Donald Trump, they shouldn't wait till after the election.
Well, yes, she did say that for sure.
Look, there's been a whole obviously Look, as I'm sure almost everyone here knows, our government is not actually run by elected representatives.
What?
I'm sorry to shock everyone here, but there are unelected, shadowy figures who have far more power than even the President of the United States has. The head of the Federal Reserve has far more power than the President of the United States have. The head of the CIA has far more power than the President of the United States has. And all of the really powerful people have signaled that under no circumstances will Donald Trump be allowed to be president of the United States again. And Nikki Haley is playing the game of, let me hang out here and see if by some other forces Donald Trump is removed and then I get the nomination. But that's the only game. So I don't completely disagree with you. Mm-hmm. I'm just making the point that I do think she sees a path. It's not an electoral path to victory, but she sees a path of something happens to Trump, he's taken out of the equation, and I get the nomination.
A procedural path, if you
yes.
would. I love making this reference because it's from a children's show, but it's I think it's Justice League. Lex Luthor, the comic book supervillain who hates Superman, is running for president. And when one of the heroes confronts him, Luthor says, "Do you have any idea how much power I would have to give up to be president?" Right. It's fascinating to me that even children's programming thinks 10, 12-year-old boys who watch superhero shows are smart enough to understand your government is not run by politicians, but by powerful corporate interests.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And not just, look, obviously there's corporate interests and money interests who have tremendous influence over our government. But I'm saying even within the government apparatus itself, look, Chuck Schumer famously said the quiet part out loud when he was in an impromptu way on Rachel Maddow's show. This was in 2017. It was, I believe, in January, either December 16 or January 17. It was when Trump was president-elect, before he had been sworn in. And Rachel Maddow, if you ever watch it, she kind of interrupts and she goes, "Look, this wasn't on the program, but Donald Trump just tweeted this. Have you seen what he tweeted?" And he tweeted something criticizing the CIA. And Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, with no hesitation went, "I mean, man, that's really stupid to criticize the CIA because they have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you." And so he just let you know that the commander-in-chief dare not criticize his intelligence agencies who work for him because they will ruin you. But by the way, what happened? Oh yeah, they framed him for treason. Yeah, for 3 years after that. So and then look, just think about the whoever runs the Federal Reserve. I mean, you want to get reelected or something like that, they could just be like, okay, I'm jacking interest rates up by 2 points. Mm-hmm. You're done. You have no shot. That's it. So look, we all talk about like politics and government all the time. And it's like, if we're talking about it and you don't recognize this reality, we're almost not even really talking about the thing that we're talking about. This government is not run by the politicians who we elect, if that's even right. But whatever. I'm not questioning any elections. I would never do that. Not on YouTube.
You're allowed
to. Every election is legitimate.
You're allowed to.
Are we allowed to now?
Yeah, they changed the rules like a year ago.
Don't make claims about it that you can't back up.
I'm not making any claims.
But
I'm saying that
question
if elections are even legitimate, doesn't really matter because none of those people run the government.
I think this is really interesting because Nikki Haley, when she gave that speech, you know, her "I am not dropping out" speech, which bad luck that you have to even make that. But she said, if I were to drop out right now, this would be the longest general election in American history. And I think that's good, right? Like if we stopped worrying about who's going to be the presidential nominees, if we accept that it's going to be a Biden-Trump matchup, any conservative, libertarian, independent could really demand that you hear more specifically who is going to be in your cabinet, who are you going to appoint to these positions of power, what are you going to do to change? We don't want it to just be, oh yes, we'll talk about it later. We need specific names because we basically already know these people's platforms. We don't need to go over this again. We need to know what your staffing policy is.
Yeah, and I'd like to see more of a matchup between Biden and Trump. Like we saw them both at the border. I thought that was really fascinating to see both of them and how they both handled that. One was effective and well-spoken and seemed conscious, and the other one did not seem like any of those things. And I think that during the 2020 election, we had a situation where Joe Biden was living in his basement and spending absolutely no time actually on the campaign trail. When he was on the campaign trail, do you guys remember this? It was like he would be on a stage 6 feet separated from a bunch of Jeeps that were 6 feet separated. There were no people. He was debating, he was debating before an audience of Jeeps. And it was like there was nothing he didn't have to prove anything. But actually standing next to Trump, he would clearly have to prove something. I'd love to see just more debates between the two of them.
How much do you think Jeep paid for that?
Probably a ton.
Yeah, I bet they were like, hey, can we buy the empty audience area and just put a bunch of cars there?
And that's what it was. And it was all Jeep commercials, too, during that event.
That's so weird. Biden brought to you by Jeep.
But look, to your point,
I think we should start remembering what they did to us in 2020.
Look, I completely agree with that. But to your point, I mean, look, what a ridiculous rationalization from Nikki Haley, because the reality is that you're asking people to continue to donate money, to donate their time, to volunteer for your campaign, to come out and cast ballots for you. And there's only really two reasons you could possibly ask for that. Number one is that there's a path to victory. And number two is that our campaign is spreading some type of message that is important, that is necessary. And what is Nikki Haley's, first of all, there's no path to victory other than Donald Trump gets arrested or something like that, or convicted, I should say, he's been arrested. And the message she's spreading is like, hey, the military-industrial complex makes a point. Like, there's like, what do you...
They need our help.
What is the point of you staying in here? It's all just like completely ridiculous.
That's what concerns me big time about it. Because like, why would she choose to stay in? There's no reason. She's lost. So someone's chosen for her to stay in.
That's exactly
right.
I think
not because of the message. It's not. They're not giving a message. They're just waiting in the wings for something to happen. Which makes me nervous.
Maybe it is what Dave was saying. Maybe they're just waiting for Trump to lose on these lawsuits. But now, at this point, we see that so many of them are going to be delayed. They're not going to be able to decide this stuff before the election at all. You know what I mean?
If she dropped out and then Trump were removed from the ballot, could she go back in? Or are you, once you're out, are you out?
Theoretically,
Marianne Williamson unsuspended her campaign.
Well, look, theoretically, if nobody reaches the whatever the 1,200 or whatever delegates you need, the RNC gets to pick who the nominee is. There's no like inherent democratic process forced into primary processes. So like the RNC can decide whoever they want the nominee to be at the convention if nobody meets the threshold.
Which
Dave,
is
I have
not great.
I got to ask Dave a question because we've had many people speculate on this show. But what you said a moment ago is that they will not allow Donald Trump to be president. These people have substantially more power. The question then is, what happens? Is it really simple? Is it Trump gets convicted? It's looking like his trials are going to be delayed well beyond the election, so that's not going to matter.
Well, look, we still have, it's a weird thing in the United States of America, right? Like you have, say, like the Constitution, and you could read the Constitution and then look at the government that we have right now and recognize that it bears no resemblance to this document. And the truth is that it's a very kind of uniquely American idea. There's lots of countries out there that don't have written constitutions. They just kind of have like norms and precedents and things like that. We do still have like these ancient dying structures of some degree of separation of powers, of some of these institutions. And you saw this with the Supreme Court. the other day. Like, it was unanimous. Everyone's like, no, there's no way you can interpret from the Constitution that you can just scream insurrectionist and then take someone off the ballot. You know, like even the liberal justices were like, this is too ridiculous. And so you do still have this process. Look, they can't just bring a charge of insurrection against him and then bring that to court.
Well,
because
he was
way,
acquitted of it.
Well, right, but they know. No, he wasn't acquitted.
He was acquitted of yes, he was.
Insurrection? When was
Donald
he ever
Trump,
charged?
No,
with
he
it?
wasn't charged.
He
with
was impeached in
Oh,
Congress.
no. I'm
Oh,
sorry. I'm not talking about being impeached.
I know. But this is arguably for a president under the immunity argument. The process goes, an impeachment is effectively the indictment. And then if you are convicted by the Senate, it opens you up to criminal prosecution.
Sure. So I was referring to criminal. I'm saying they couldn't even get him on the impeachment over it, let alone the idea of they could actually bring criminal charges.
My point is double jeopardy might actually apply.
Yeah.
Oh, you think because of the impeachment?
An argument that's been made is
that's interesting.
He's already been effectively charged and tried and acquitted.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know whether that's right or not, but that's interesting. But I'm just making the point that, look, there are these things that they're trying to go through clearly to get him removed from the race. I don't know exactly how this plays out. I will say that Donald Trump's enemies are the most powerful people in the history of the world. And if you're betting on who wins that fight,
Donald Trump.
you know, look, you're saying, yeah, but a lot of the American people support him.
Yeah, Dave,
right.
but Trump's playing 5D chess.
Well, yes, that's what people say. So I would just say that it's certainly, look, if we're just going by democracy, then obviously Donald Trump is clearly going to win the nomination. If we're just going by democracy, it seems like a pretty good bet that he would beat Joe Biden in an election right now.
Now.
But there's lots of other factors other than the democratic process.
Let me pull up this. This is from NBC News' live tracker. Which of these 4 issues mattered most in deciding your vote today? And this is for Virginia GOP primary voters. Immigration is the most important for Virginia Republican voters. I find that to be particularly interesting. And of course, they're 2-1 supporting Donald Trump. We've seen these polls already over and over again that immigration has become the principal issue in this election, which is crazy because of the famous saying, it's the economy, stupid. Who was it? Was that Carville who said that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's the economy, stupid. It always comes down to money. The issue now is immigration is an economic issue and a crime issue. And, you know, I was talking to a young business owner. I mentioned this the other day on the show. A young business owner said he's Gen Z. He runs his own business. He works hard every day, and he can't afford rent. He can barely afford to live. And then I said, and these non-citizens they're bringing in, they're being given debit cards, luxury hotels. And he was like, exactly.
Not only that,
he said he voted for Biden last time. He's going to vote for Trump this time.
in California, they're getting houses with no payments down, no
Full
interest
rent for a year.
no interest loans, all of this stuff. It's absolutely ludicrous. All of this we're doing for people who are coming here from around the world who are taking advantage of the system. We've seen that too. People are like, oh, I came here because I could get a whole bunch of free stuff. We don't give free stuff to all of the Americans, and Americans, for the most part, don't want free stuff. They want the opportunity to work for a living and raise their families and do right.
This was actually wild because I'm talking to this dude, and he was like, you know, the thing is, when they started giving all these illegal immigrants these hotel rooms, they kind of just explained they could have solved the homeless crisis overnight.
But they chose not to.
But they chose to give it to the non-citizens instead of solving the homeless crisis. And I was like, don't vote for Democrats.
Well, it seems like, look, from my perspective, like I'm like a radical libertarian, and basically my philosophical position is that governments are criminal gangs by their very nature, and that they're always screwing over their own people. But at least historically, they try to mask that. You know, like they try to convince you they're not doing it. And it seems like our government is actively making sure that you know. Like, it's not just that we're screwing you over, but you're going to know and be humiliated by it. And that's a great example of it. Of course, and the other example is, look, in San Francisco, when they cleaned up the streets because she was coming in to meet with Biden, and they just let you know that they can clean up San Francisco like that if they want to.
Well, and
but they don't care to do it.
They even said it because people were like, oh, you're doing this because the fancy people are coming to town. And Newsom was like, yeah, that's right.
We want to look good.
Our citizens don't
what
matter.
a slap in the face
Yeah.
to the taxpayers.
But that's
in
what
San
I think
Francisco.
immigration is generally.
Yes, it's the same
number
thing.
one, that it's the reason it's a big issue is because Americans feel disenfranchised with a government that does not care about them. It's criminal, it's economic, but it's also just civic, right? You're saying that people who come here illegally, who do not participate or share the burdens that you do, both ethically, morally, philosophically, are able to take advantage from a system that you helped build, right?
Yeah.
You aren't given the same passes that they are. I mean, one of the stories that always comes back to me is I know someone out here in West Virginia who got into like a minor traffic accident and he hit a piece of government property. And he was facing jail time and he was standing in front of the judge, and the person in front of him was an illegal immigrant. And the judge said, hold on, before we go, do you know that you can contact this nonprofit organization and they'll set you up with a lawyer and they'll help you and this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, the American citizen who made a mistake, whatever else, was having to pay for his own legal services. The judge was not nearly as lenient or supportive. And it's this direct comparison of, well, you broke the law, but it's okay.
Right.
But if you are here and we as a country have a duty to serve one another, you are treated as though you are the other, you are the wrong.
So the term that I believe it was Sam Francis who coined the term, but is anarco-tyranny.
That's exactly
right.
Yeah, I was
And this is
thinking that too.
it perfectly sits. And by the way, I was on the phone with Michael Heiss, but who's been on the show before too. He's the founder of the Mises Caucus and the Libertarian Party. Great guy, totally brilliant. And he literally said this to me, and I never even really made this connection before, but he said to me, he goes, the whole immigration thing, it's just another example of anarcho-tyranny. It's like, look, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know the term, the idea is like anarchism and tyranny, and even though they seem kind of like opposites, but we kind of live under an anarcho-tyrannical system where, okay, if you're a homeless guy who wants to do heroin on the street and live there, no one's going to stop you from doing that. But if you, citizen, want to start a business, there's 5,000 regulations that you will be forced to pay. You know what I mean? So like,
It's anarchy for
you have
criminals and tyranny for citizens.
Right, the worst of anarchy
Yeah.
and the worst of tyranny. And what Michael was pointing out to me when we were on the phone, he goes, look, if you want to immigrate to this country legally, there's 7 million hoops you have to jump through, an impossible bureaucracy, this whole crazy system. But if you just sneak over the border, you're welcomed in and given free stuff. And you're like, that's really the
And
thing.
you get a court date like
right. And so they're
5 years later.
So they encourage people in this weird way. It's this crazy perverse incentive where they encourage you to do the thing we don't want you to do rather than the civilized thing.
I think a portion of anarcho-tyranny, like the immigration stuff, seems on purpose.
Oh, listen.
Like they open the
No
border
question.
up. But for a lot of regular crime stuff, what I think is police officers have to confront a violent murderer. Screw that. I'm not taking that risk. Or a guy who was speeding. Oh, easy. Pull him over. He takes a ticket. Then he's on his way. So for the regular person, it's very much in tune with the gun argument. So if we were to ban all guns, then of course criminals would still have guns for 2 reasons. Anybody with a gun becomes a criminal, and criminals never cared in the first place.
Right.
Now when it comes to the crimes we're seeing at the street level, these people who are looting these stores know the cops are going to be like, I'm not going in there. There's 20 people looting a store. You want me to fight those guys? You're nuts. But then if there's someone who's driving his car and he goes over the lane or whatever on accident, the cop's like, I got him now. He's going to pull you over and be like, woo, I'm going to wag my finger at you. I got you.
Well, that's definitely true. There's always been an incentive problem with cops in that way. That it's always kind of like, obviously, they'd rather deal with the non-threatening criminal than the threatening criminal.
Right.
But the other thing that you deal with is like, so look, if you think about like, say, I mean, in California, in some of their major cities, it's like the most clear example of it, but where they'll essentially decriminalize shoplifting. Yet, if you own the store and you go, okay, cops, fine, you don't want to deal with my shoplifting problem, but I will hire armed security to deal with it myself. They go, well, he's not allowed to have that gun.
Yep.
He's not allowed to deal with them. He's not allowed to grab that guy. And they will come in and prosecute you if you protect your own property. So it's coming at regular people from both angles, intentionally to ruin our society.
But why? And I think it's fairly obvious. You saw AOC get hounded by those activists earlier.
That was fascinating.
Can I just
yesterday.
say, by the way, pro-Palestine activist, thank you. Keep it where it belongs. Harass AOC. Stop blocking roads and just harass AOC. That's a better way to deal with the problem.
We'll keep it verbatim. or keep it literal, they followed her, like they didn't even harass her. They followed her and said, will you call what's going on in Palestine a genocide? And she was like, you're a liar or whatever. I totally forgot what I was going to say because you made that point.
I'm sorry.
So now we're talking about that. What we were talking about narco-tyranny and crime and stuff.
Well, why?
Oh, right. Here we go.
Shot
I got it. We're back, baby. Conservatives don't do this. Conservatives will not walk behind Mitch McConnell walking down the stairs being like, Mitch, why did you do this? Mitch, why did you do that? They fear nothing. In fact, the only thing conservatives fear is leftists, because you get, what's her face, Maxine Waters, whatever, being like, confront them, get in their face. And so you'll end up with, Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz at a restaurant.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders,
and a bunch of leftists will come screaming. If you are on the right, the left will scream at you. If you're on the left will scream at you. And if you are on the right just says, well, okay, I guess. So what ends up happening? When it comes to enforcement of law, it is really simple. It is conservatives roll with the punches and say, okay, I guess. And the only threat factor for any politician comes from left-wing activists. So you look at this, allsides.com has a really great breakdown of media. All of these news organizations, these aggregators, even Drudge, are aggregating from left-wing sources. Drudge was the funniest because they do pull from some right-wing sources and they do pull stories that tend to be more right-leaning, but it's almost all from left-leaning publications. So if it's a story that's somewhat beneficial to Trump, it's still coming from CNN. And then you look at everybody else, all these other aggregators, Google.com, obviously, skewing 64% of its results to the left. Why? If any one of these social platforms, you search for it and they put out a right-wing story, left-wing activists will complain. The analogy I like to give is it's really, really simple. Back when Twitter was censoring everybody, the way to understand why Twitter put in place a misgendering policy and why it even comes back, the question is this. Will Dave Rubin lead a band of classical liberals with crowbars and torches to burn down Twitter HQ? No, that will never happen. Will Antifa on the far left? They've already been attacked several times. They've already protested universities. They've already firebombed buildings. So anyone who's making a threat assessment is going to be like, these conservatives don't do anything. Why do I care? And these libertarians don't do anything. Why would I care? Yeah, but if we do this, the left's going to get mad and they'll literally come here with crowbars. Just give them whatever they want.
Yeah.
That all piles up. It piles up into policy. It piles up into law enforcement. There's a video of a cop. There's a guy backing away with his hands up from Antifa. Antifa guys are pointing weapons at him. The cops run up and grab him and arrest him. The victim who's backing away. Why? Because the cops are thinking something really simple. If I arrest one Antifa guy, the rest will throw stones at me. If I arrest this one guy's backing away, they'll cheer for me. We saw this in Canada with Dan Dix. He was filming. Far leftists attacked him. He's a journalist. And the police said, you need to leave. And he goes, me, I'm the victim. And they were like, so what? Because the cops are like, if you stay and we try to enforce the law, they will attack all of us. So we'd rather target you. And the warning I've made, which we've already seen, is that if these riots expand into the summer again, because it wanes in the winter and comes back in the summer. Granted, Summer of Love was something else. But when riots come, eventually they come to your house. And the police are going to be standing there looking at rioters outside your home and you and your family inside. And they're going to be thinking to themselves, how do we stop the chaos? And they're going to come to the easiest conclusion ever. They're going to say, arrest the guy in his home because it's one arrest. He won't resist. And then the rioters will not act out. This happened I think it was in Wisconsin. I believe it was outside of Milwaukee. Far leftists had been protesting in front of a guy's house. This same group of people. I
remember this, yeah.
The same group of people had set fire to another house. Mm-hmm. The guy in his home brandished a shotgun. I don't recommend you do that, but he did. So the police showed up to the cheers of Black Lives Matter and arrested the man from his own home. This will only get worse unless we recognize. I certainly don't recommend doing what the left does in terms of violence and extremism. Absolutely not. They would seek to weaponize those actions. But organization is what needs to happen.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, so I think you're right about everything, right? And so
always. Thank you, Dave.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to say always, but that last rant was totally right. Well, look, this has always been true to some degree, right? That there is an advantage inherently when it comes to activism that the left wing has over the right wing. Because right-wingers have things that left-wingers don't have. Silly little things like jobs and families. And
Yes.
so they're not just going to go protest all day, you know?
Of course,
And
yep.
but specifically in this situation, I think for anybody who's not a left-wing progressive, you know, not a woke progressive or whatever, you have to recognize that, like, okay, this is the situation. The system is rigged against you. If you try to... Part of the reason why you're saying you don't advocate that the right embrace the tactics of the left is, number one, we don't stand for that. It's wrong. But number two, because you'll just be treated like January 6th, not like the summer of love. You will. Yeah. They'll use you as an excuse to crack down on all of our civil liberties, and they'll put you down with force. So it won't work anyway. So what you have to do is recognize that and then go, okay, well, what is the strategic way to fight this battle?
And we're winning.
Well, I will say there's been a few, particularly last year, there were a couple of major successes, which I do consider major successes with Bud Light and Target. And that organized boycotts are very powerful. Despite the fact that this whole economy is run off fiat money and all of this kind of fake, you know, nonsense, they still do need customers, a lot of these big, and the right half of America has a lot of purchasing power, and so that's a very powerful way to do it.
So
but I do think,
why did those boycotts work in a way that other efforts haven't?
I think there just haven't been like strategic efforts like that before. I don't think there was actually a line where almost every influential right winger was like, hey, we're just, and look, by the way, there's been a million things that were affronts to right wingers and their liberty and their decency more than putting Dylan Mulvaney on that Bud Light.
But the gender thing is really what...
No. But for whatever... I'm not saying the gender thing in general. I'm just saying that thing just happened to like strike a nerve enough that it was such a thing that Bud Light was not for those people.
Well,
and you were coming into their space and it just struck a nerve that they were like, you know what, we're making this our thing. And they've got Bud Light is sponsoring Sean Strickland and Shane Gillis now.
Amazing.
That's how much they've backed off.
One quick correction or context. It was not that Bud Light put Dylan Mulvaney in a can. It was that Bud Light hired Dylan Mulvaney to promote a sporting event to sell beer to children and paid six figures reportedly.
You're right, and that it was right. It was like a few specialty cans
mocking March Madness.
Yes, it was just too much of an intentional, like we're just trying to poke at you that it elicited that reaction.
I think it's really simple. The right had been truly the silent majority, as many people had said, and so when people look to culture, the only thing they see is wokeness. And so they assume that's the game we got to play. And then, whoopsie, turns out most people are sick of it.
Yeah.
So Bud Light, they lost $10 billion in sales, $30 billion in market cap. It's a lot of money to lose because you hired some millennial woman to run your marketing. And then she decided the frat bro days of Bud Light are over.
And she was so proud of herself. She was so excited about it.
But she precipitated it.
Yes.
Yeah.
She got
Frat Bros built America. What is she doing?
Frat Bros built America.
She got put on leave.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, the majority of presidents have been a member of fraternities. So.
I mean, if you think of all those guys in downtown New York City and they were like, you know, stealing British cannons and blowing shit up. Like,
it's a boys club.
So guys, we do have a bunch of results, and I don't want you to look at I'm curious. So we've got Virginia, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Tennessee have been called for Trump. I'm curious, Tennessee, what's the margin you think Trump won by?
98%.
That's a bit high.
No, I'd say, wait, it's 72%. It's been called?
It's been called, but so as of right now, what do you think the margin is they've called Tennessee for Trump?
30 points.
30 points? It is 80% to Haley's 16.4.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
A bit more than 30 points.
Get used to it.
To be fair, only 4% is in. That's why.
All right.
But she has been losing by wider and wider margins ever since she made that "I'm not dropping out" speech. I mean, it was like what, just over Trump got just over 50% in New Hampshire, or Iowa, then New Hampshire, and now. What was South Carolina?
Hey,
like
look at this.
68%?
Well, hold on. Vermont is too close to call. They're separated by one vote in Vermont. And I just want to take the time to point out to Luke Rutkowski, who kept saying New Hampshire is the place to be. And New Hampshire, Nikki Haley got 43%, and Vermont is next door. And I said, I don't trust New Hampshire because it's surrounded by the far left. And then Luke, sure enough, moves to Florida instead. So, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to my New Hampshire people are going to get mad at me. I think they have an open primary there where like Democrats and independents can vote.
And they
too.
outright
So
said
it's
they were
not-
Democrats.
Yeah. So it's a little, like tricky to see what exactly was going on there. I will say that, look, there's been a lot of governors who have run for president. There's been governors that have won the presidency before. It's a really rough sign if you can't carry the state you were a governor of.
Oh yeah.
Like
It's pretty bad.
even John Kasich, who had no other claim, he could at least say, hey, look, the state where I governed them, they liked me and they picked me. And that could kind of at least let you leave without being totally
a little bit of
humiliated.
dignity,
But
I did a point.
Sorry.
Finish that thought.
No, that was it. Just when you lose by double digits, the state you were a governor of, it's.
But
and I think that's
real
your point.
quick,
Why
real quick.
the margins widened after that.
NBC News with 0.2% reporting in Arkansas. It says it's too early to call, but they just called it for Trump.
Yeah,
with
there it is.
0.2% in, Arkansas has been called for Trump. I wanted to point out they gave him the delegates before even calling the race.
How
That
they
is
were like
pretty funny.
Trump's getting them.
But they still haven't called Texas, even though it's going to go for
Well,
Trump.
0.2% is just so early. Texas wants to get up to at least 1%.
Right, they want to go.
How can you call it for a guy at 0.2%?
Yeah, listen,
Ian,
this has been
we
happening
called
a
it
lot.
for Trump before the show started.
That's
That's
true,
true.
too. Yeah, we did.
I
that.
will say, and maybe I did take AP statistics, but it was a long time ago, man. And I will say I don't exactly understand how you could possibly call races when
Well,
there's 1%
they
in.
rely on
I don't
exit
get-
polling, though,
I know
right?
it's a mix of the exit polling and what the districts that haven't come in yet
Right,
and what
what
they
they
kind
look
of
like.
know
Yeah,
the
what they
numbers
look like.
already. But it does seem a little bit ridiculous. You would think if you're being a professional, you could never with 1% in just call a race off. But look, the overwhelming narrative here is that Donald Trump is incredibly popular amongst Republican voters. The majority, somewhere between the majority to the overwhelming majority, it's hard depending on what poll you go by, of Republicans believe that the last election was stolen from Donald Trump. I'm not saying that's the case. I like Glenn Greenwald's framing. I think it was rigged more than it was stolen, but whatever. They think the election was stolen. So you have a Republican base where the majority of people believe that he is the rightful president of the United States of America. And in that, and there are a couple of them here, and in that scenario, how you're going to beat somebody in a primary is a near impossible task.
She would get substantially more respect from Trump voters if she came out and when they were like, what is your policy position and why are you better than Trump? And she went, I'm not better than Trump. He's going to go to prison and then it's my turn. People
she
would be
was
like,
honest,
well,
yeah.
okay, I guess that makes sense.
But
Instead, she's lying and insulting Trump.
Well, look,
She's saying that she may not honor the RNC pledge, the
That was-
loyalty pledge.
But she didn't say that. I
She
mean,
said, "I can't think about it right now." No, she could have said-
But she couldn't. There's no way to say that she's going to honor the pledge without admitting that she's already lost.
she could have said,
know what I
that's
mean?
what
Like,
I
that's
pledge
part of
and
the
I will
issue.
stand by my word no matter
Sure.
what happens, although I expect to win and every state
Sure.
and make Dave Smith very rich.
I do think that
it's
you're
weird
right
that
that
she
the-
didn't take a more definitive stance. She was like, I can't think about that right now.
But what
Who
she did
knows?
say was that the RNC then is not the same RNC as it is now, which I do think that was pretty telling, that she's basically admitting that the Republican Party is moving entirely away from her establishment neocon setup, and it's moving, fully definitively toward the populist MAGA movement. What I'm really interested in this general election is I think that we have Biden voters and we have Trump voters who have completely different visions for the country. And I don't think, like when I was a kid, I think there was a lot of cases where you had disagreements between Republicans and Democrats. Like my stepmom was a Democrat, my dad was a Republican. They would sit there at the dinner table and argue about Ronald Reagan or whatever else. But they had the same idea of what the country should be. The country should be, there should be God in the country. There should be good public schools. There should be, reasonable border. We should have a strong military. They thought all that stuff. Mostly what they were arguing about was like, how much social safety net should there be? That was basically the question. How much should we defend other countries? That kind of stuff. But I think we're in a situation now where the left and the right do not have any kind of unified vision for what the nation should be. And I would like to see Biden say what he thinks, or whoever's pulling his strings, say what he thinks the future of the country should look like and what Trump says the future of the country should look like, and let the American people decide what vision of the future for our nation, because it's our nation, that we want to see.
Listen, I just say it's not even that we have different visions for what the future should be. I mean, I totally agree with you, but it's that we're living in different realities. And our reality, I believe the reality I'm living in is actual reality. But just very quickly, I'm sorry. But did you see just the other day when Dr. Phil was on The View?
Yeah.
And he just mentioned at one point how, like, closing the schools was totally obviously not the right move in hindsight, and it had all these negative externalities for little kids, and they were never really at risk of getting them. And the ladies on The View were like, they had never come in contact with this argument.
Right.
Like, they still at this point don't recognize that, oh yeah, the lockdowns were a total mistake.
But you have.
Yeah.
This is the frustrating and thing about the reality is it's flowing in one direction. Democrats have not been exposed to arguments being made on shows like this, and people on shows like this have been exposed to it all. One of the best examples, holy crap, this Bill Maher clip. I got to pull this clip up. Let's do a segment on this because I got to rag on Bill Maher more for the day. I didn't rag on him enough. He needs to retire. He is 68 years old. He's been doing the show for a long time. Shout out and congratulations to all your success. I'm scrolling down looking for this clip. And this is obscene. Let me play this clip for you guys, and you're going to laugh.
CPAC, do you know what that is?
Is this playing out there too?
What is it?
Unfortunately.
What is PAC?
Political Action Committee.
Political Action Committee. Okay.
Yeah.
It's their big convention every year. It's like corporations have a big convention. They have their big convention. I made jokes about it every year. I can't remember the last time we did it. It goes way back. I remember once calling it the Woodstock for the mentally impaired.
I'd just like to take a quick moment and make sure we put a pin in that. He said, Woodstock for the mentally impaired. That's CPAC. And now enjoy the rest of the clip.
But in years past, it was like the most conservative commentators and senators and governors. And okay, this year there's a guy, I've heard this name, I don't know who he is, Jack Prozobic. He's doing sort of like
because he's a pro.
roundtable discussion, it's a convention, they have these things. This is a quote, "Welcome to the end of democracy. We are here to overthrow it completely. We didn't get all the way there on January 6th, but we will endeavor to get rid of it." Am I missing an irony here? Am I missing a joke? Or is it, as it seems now, they are saying the quiet part out loud?
Yeah.
That they are not. This is CPAC. This is Republican conservative, their big convention. And you have a guy like this and the crowd is loving it. Welcome to the end of democracy. We're here to overthrow it. January 6th was good. Now we're going to finish the job. Thoughts?
It's scary.
Thoughts on that?
Bill, that was a joke about Trump making a joke about being a dictator day one in office. That is an ironic take on how the liberal
that was my question. Am I missing the irony?
Conservatives, I think so. Yes, it's a joke.
Really?
But,
He's so
and
embarrassed.
I think more to the point.
Tim, don't stop it. Play it to the
Bill,
end.
and to
Keep your day job, Jack.
That's the worst part. By the way, to keep your day job is the worst part of the whole thing. Because even after he's exposed, he still tries to go, well, your joke sucked. And you're like, dude, you didn't get it. You got it totally wrong. And you should feel bad about yourself.
But it's worse than that. I think the response from me is, Bill, quit your day job. Okay, you're past your prime.
Give Jack a show.
It's a huge blunder. But I'll tell you what happened is Jack Posobiec made a very obvious joke where he was mocking the liberal press's interpretation of January 6th. He was laughing while he said it. The audience laughed, and then CNN ran it as if it was a real quote without showing the clip. You get a guy on TV being like, and now they're saying, did you see this? The guy's saying they want to overthrow democracy, and that they want to finish the job. They didn't get done on January 6th. Then some research intern for Bill Maher writes it down on a card and hands it to him. Bill Maher never saw the clip, never Googled the clip, reads it and goes, am I missing something here? They're just saying the quiet part out loud. And Batya Ungar-Sargon goes, it's a joke. And he goes, oh, well, it's a stupid joke.
Well, and
Batya
is great.
part.
I mean, shout out to Batya.
She's great. Batya is fantastic.
Yeah.
Two quick points right here, okay? And number one, it goes exactly to the point that you were just making about how people who watch shows like this are familiar with the progressive argument, because how could they not be? It's the dominant
we make fun of them all
argument.
the time.
Right. We couldn't not be. And by the way, if you don't believe, Jonathan Haidt has actually done like academic studies on this, where the left-wingers will, like, they cannot tell you what the right-wing argument is, whereas the right-wingers can tell you what the left-wing argument is. And this just proves the point that, just imagine what a caricature you would have to have in your mind, that even if someone were to say to you, hey, someone at CPAC got up and said January 6th was great and we're going to go further and we're going to overthrow democracy, you'd be like, my eyebrows raised by that? Like, that doesn't sound like that could have been what happened. Number two, just a personal story very quickly about Jack, who I do not know very well. But I will say this. I had this, so about last year at some point, there was a video of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Again, this is back before all the Israel stuff, when I really liked him. And there was this video that was totally taken out of context of him. When he made his speech that he was announcing he was running for president, he talked about the war in Ukraine. And he basically kind of like, he had like a disclaimer up front, and then talked about why the war was a total sham and why we shouldn't be supporting them. And people just clipped the disclaimer and didn't play the second part. And that it was making it seem like he was supporting the war in Ukraine, whereas really he came out totally against the thing. And Jack tweeted the clipped portion. And I quote tweeted him, and I was like, this is totally taken out of context. This is not at all what happened, and here's the full version. And Jack, who I've never met before, direct messaged me and went, dude, I got it wrong. I fell for it. I saw the full version. You're absolutely right. He deleted his tweet. He retweeted my quote tweet and then said, Dave was right. I got this wrong. I'm going to delete my tweet and leave this one up here because this reflects accurately what he said. But, so when we're all wrong sometimes, but the thing to do is just go, oops. Okay, I just kind of made a jerk out of myself. I got that wrong. It's okay. But Bill Maher's reaction is, well, don't quit your day job. Like, nah, dude, come on. You got this wrong.
You got caught with
so
his
just
pants
admit
down.
it. But
Just admit it. Everybody got it wrong, and they wanted to get it wrong. I mean, Bill Maher wanted to get it wrong. So did Newsweek, and so did everybody else.
For Bill, it's worse than CNN. With CNN and MSNBC, they know what they're doing. Bill Maher is sleeping till 2, smoking pot. He wakes up and they go,
and Chelsea Handler and Seth Rogen.
Yeah, and then they hand him his cards and he goes, oh, wow, someone said that, huh? And then he goes on his show and goes, wow, can you believe they said this? And you see how embarrassed he looks. And when she's like, that was a joke about Donald Trump saying he was going to be a dictator for a day, and how the liberal media responds, and Bill's like, well, that's what I was asking. I was asking if there was an irony there. I mean, it's a stupid joke anyway.
See, it makes me think his staff is like trying to keep him from the clips, and they're like, just read the card, no context, don't look at Twitter, don't look at anything, don't look at this at all, because there is someone malicious saying, oh my gosh, this quote is so crazy if we say it like it's serious.
He might fire somebody over this.
He should. Yeah. They set him up to look like an idiot.
But it's
Otherwise,
his fault.
he's just an idiot.
Dude, you have to be so uninformed and so not engaged with what the other side is actually saying for you to even, like, if you got that card, you'd be like, wait, hold on. They actually said that? Like, that doesn't make sense.
If someone came to me and said that, like, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks came out in a show screaming, saying Donald Trump should be sent to a Soviet gulag so he can spend time with his Russian buddies, I'd be like, was he joking? Because even though I disagree with the guy, that's so over the top that I wouldn't immediately assume he was being literal, that there's Soviets in Russia right now.
And if someone said to you, they go, no, he was being literal. Take this on the show.
I'm going
to have to see this clip before I go on my show and declare that this was literal.
When people told me that Keith Olbermann claimed to urinate from his eyes, I did not believe that he would actually say that.
Well, that one.
And so I
that
looked.
was actually sort of amazing, though, wasn't it?
And so I looked up his tweets, and he didn't literally say that he urinates from his eyes.
Yeah, but he did imply it.
Someone said, you're crying. He says, those aren't tears, that's urine. And people went, so you're pissing from your eyes. And it's like,
what does that even mean?
Why would that be better?
Has been born.
I was sort of joking that someone had peed on Keith Olbermann.
Well, look.
Again, none of it is good. There's no good spin for that.
There's no good scenario where you have a bunch of pee on your face.
Let's be real. When I was first told for the first time that Cenk Uygur made a defense on his show for engaging in intercourse with animals, I did not believe it. And I'm like, come on. And then I watched the clip to verify it, and it is correct. Cenk Uygur, at some time, I think 10 years ago, made a full-throated defense of people having intercourse with animals.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
It's the thing. There are different norms.
And I don't know the point he was trying to make, but even his whole staff groaned or whatever. I'm not trying to bring this all up and just drag Cenk again. My point is, there have been many absurd claims that have been made, and we fact check them. We get the clips, we get the receipts. But this is, I think, indicative of it's an example of how this culture war happens. We're always sharing clips and memes and photos. They're just saying things and agreeing with each other. They'll just say it. Bill Maher will say a thing happened, and they'll all just laugh. I mean, look at the reaction. Who's the guy? Who's the other guy? I don't know who the other guy sitting there right there. He looks familiar. Who is that?
He does look familiar, but I didn't
Ryan. What's his?
either.
Who is that? Tim Ryan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that's what it was. And he's just like, it's scary. It's like, my dude, even if, like, Batya clearly knows what the segment was and understands.
But Batya always knows what's going on. She's very smart.
But that's my point. She knows.
Yeah.
If I was sitting there and someone made the claim that a leftist called for burning down the White House or something, I'd be like, what? Like, Cenk, you could really say that? I'm going to have to check that one because I don't know if I believe that. Show me the clip. Like, if I was Tim Ryan there and Bill Maher said they want to overthrow democracy, I'm like, isn't that a little on the nose, Bill? Sounds kind of like he's being sarcastic.
Well, look, I mean,
and why is he reading off a card? Why don't they just clip?
Look, we've been kind of...
They're not as advanced as shows like us.
Oh, I understand.
Look, the United States of America, for the last 20 plus years, okay, has been living in what Glenn Greenwald called at one point an emergency legal climate, right? Yeah. So when you think about in the wake of September 11th, they passed things like the Patriot Act. And even in the immediate wake of 9/11, the Patriot Act was still considered somewhat controversial. There were still some people who were like, wait a minute, we're kind of signing away very basic constitutional protections. And so what they said was like, oh, there'll be like a sunset clause in this, and it will expire in a few years. And then Congress will have to come back and argue that the emergency is still going on, and that's why we need to extend it. But it just gets extended. Sometimes it's put under a different name, but it still just gets extended. The TSA is still here. The Department of Homeland Security is still here. So we're in this constant kind of emergency governing mode. And in order to do this, there always has to be a constant threat that's built up. Well, and that's why Scott's response immediately is like terrifying. Because in the same way that they had to say that, like, listen, Saddam Hussein is best friends with Al-Qaeda and he's about to give them the weapons of mass destruction that he doesn't have. You know, like, he wasn't friends with them and he didn't have the weapons. This was all lies, but they would make that threat. And then they would always create whatever the threat is, that Gaddafi's about to go genocidal, or Assad's killing his own people, or Putin's going to reconstitute the Soviet Union, and in this case, the threat that they're trying to use is January 6th represents this attempt of the right half of America to overthrow democracy. And the commonality in all of these threats is that they're all pure lies. None of them exist. None of them are actually threats to the United States of America. But they need this in order to kind of justify how even you see, because if you watch Bill Maher sometimes, he'll rail against wokeism, he'll rail against the insanity of the COVID restrictions and what California's come to and all of this, and he'll get big applause in his audience, but then it always returns back to, but this other side is such a bigger threat. They have to keep that going, or there's no way they can justify their authoritarianism.
I want to pull up this story from the Post Millennial. Kirsten Sinema will not seek re-election in Arizona, and I really don't care if she does or doesn't. She won her seat as a Democrat, switched to independent. What's the real story here is that she said, I believe in my approach, but it's not what America wants right now. I love Arizona. I'm so proud of what we've delivered because I choose civility, understanding, listening, working together to get stuff done. I will leave the Senate at the end of this year.
Is that like a dig at Kari Lake or something?
No, the issue here is that you have the enlightened centrist types, and they are fewer and far between as of late, but they still exist, where they argue that you're either on the left or the right. There's no middle ground anymore. I would argue that this show actually is fairly moderate, but there is reality. And the reality is Joe Biden was involved in the Burisma scandal. Joe Biden flew to Ukraine and said, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion. It was testified, I believe it was Devin Archer, that Hunter Biden called DC and said, we need help with this. The prosecutor's investigating us. And then Biden flies out at the end of the year and then basically says, fire this prosecutor. We've uncovered so much.
Matt Taibbi's done great reporting on that as well. Yeah.
And Taibbi's not a conservative guy.
Biden admitted that.
And the point is this. The left will argue it's not true when it is. And the enlightened centrist cinema types will say, can't we all just get along? Now, the left has this meme where there's the Klan and there's black people, and there's a guy in the middle with this smirking face holding up a sign saying compromise. That's how the left wants to frame this, as if they are right, and if you're trying to compromise with crazies. Now, I agree with the general idea of the enlightened centrist types like cinema, who are arguing you need to be more moderate. You're too conservative. You're supporting the right. You're supporting Trump and blah blah blah. And it's like some things are just true. Some things are reality. Joe Biden did these things. We now know from Hunter Biden that he was the big guy in these emails getting these kickbacks, influence peddling. Granted, that was after he left the vice presidency. But if you look at things that are true, and then you look at, say, Adam Schiff and Jamie Raskin, they are lying about everything. Nancy Pelosi, she is lying about everything. There is a reality and there is a propaganda manipulation. And if you are on the side of reality, they will call you right-wing no matter what, because it is not your policy positions that make you left or right. It's what you know to be true that makes you right-wing or conservative.
Well, essentially, the definition from their perspective is anyone who is not lockstep with the woke agenda is right-wing. And to your point, there's this, look, there's almost, it's like we're living in like a funhouse mirror version of reality, if you watch like CNN or something like that. So there's almost two types of centrism. So one type of centrism is like, hey, I don't think we should be way too far to the left or way too far to the right. We should just meet in the middle with Hillary Clinton and John McCain. You know, but then you're kind of like, wait a minute, but you're the most radical people on the planet. You're the guys who want to, bankrupt the country fighting every war around the world. And then there's also a different type of kind of like centrism or like moderate position that's just like, hey, I'm not like some crazy right-winger who's saying that like all women need to be in the kitchen and never speak in public. And I'm not some crazy left-winger who's saying like little kids should have genital mutilation surgery. I'm just saying like, hey, let's talk about this.
What's
and
the
kind
middle
of
ground between the two?
The middle ground between the two is just kind of like...
this sort of goes back to what you were talking about with regard to ruling through crisis, right? And leading by crisis. How can you have a moderate position when you have a crisis? Well, what's the moderate position on do we put the house fire out or not?
No, finish that thought.
No, and we've had several major crises that have been like sort of fabricated and pushed on us, and there are some real ones. So what you have is like you have the immigration crisis, but you also had the Biden and Harris going on about how racism was a crisis and the environment is a crisis and all of this. So once you are instilling in people that it is life and death, what is the middle ground between life and death?
The issue that we're facing in this country is that Donald Trump represents centrists and Democrats and Biden represent the fringe far left. And I can exemplify this very, very simply. The right-wing position on misgendering would be, if you were born female and you tell people to call you a male, to do so would be to misgender you because your gender is female. The left-wing position is, if you were born female and wish to be called male, you have to call this person the pronoun they want. So that's the left and the right position. The right, under Donald Trump, is asking social media platforms to take the middle approach and just not ban anyone. That is the centrist position. How about we go full right wing on this one and say, Elon, right now, I'd like you to institute a policy that says if a person has a preferred pronoun and you use it, you will be banned. That's the right wing position, right? Don't use people's preferred pronouns. How about we take the centrist approach that we've all been arguing for and just don't ban anyone? People can block whoever they're pissed off by. This is the issue right now. When you brought up the right wants women to never speak again and be in the kitchen, and I'm thinking to myself, if I had to make a choice between, I had no choice. It was one or the other. It was child sex change operations happening en masse, or women in the kitchen.
I'm going to agree with you on this choice. Yes.
Right. It's like, I think even women would agree. Like, I'd rather be in the kitchen than have that happen.
Yes.
But that's not even a reality because the right is not actually arguing for women to be in the kitchen. Well, some people are, but here's the question I have.
Sure.
What is the most extreme mainstream Trump supporter position? I mean, I'm talking about in the mainstream, in the press, among Trump supporters, what is their most extreme right-wing position?
Maybe just shutting down the border entirely.
Shutting down the border?
Yeah.
No, not shutting down the border. If you want to be fair about this, what is the most extreme right-wing position that Trump supporters have had? Yes. Well, look, I'll say...
Popular among Trump supporters.
Mainstream meaning prominent Trump supporters, prominent people have advocated this. I'd say it's deportation of every illegal immigrant and cutting off all trade with China, which I both do think are like, look.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put that in terms of extremism?
I mean, look, cutting off, if you were actually, and by the way, I'm completely for complete border control and all of that, but if you're talking about actually, at this point, we don't actually know what the numbers are. I mean, it's probably
upward of 10 million.
I know. It's north of 20 million for sure.
For sure.
If you're talking
since
about
2021, I think it's
a police.
20. Right?
Well, it was 12 was the number they always used forever, and then the government admits that over 7 have come in since.
But we're getting off on a tangent.
No, I'm trying to get to the point. If you're talking about a police action that is going to attempt to be deporting north of 20 million people in this country,
they're not making that argument. You are.
No.
The estimates are 10 to 15.
So
okay,
fine.
No,
let's say it's 10. Let's say it's 10.
Sure.
If you're saying that your argument is to deport them all, I'm saying that you are going to have to form a Gestapo-like police force in order to do that. We don't know who these people are. We don't know where to track them. You're going to have to be kicking down doors. You're going to be checking papers.
I get it.
And cutting off.
I get
the other argument.
My question is, how extreme on a scale of 1 to 10 do you believe it is?
Okay, so the point that I'm just making is if you actually, these are kind of bumper stickers. I don't think most of them have actually thought this through, but if you actually think through the ramifications of what it would take to enact these policies, they are pretty extreme. I'd put that one pretty high. Like that's
okay. Now so my point is this. If we were to actually assess the most extreme position held under Trump supporters, which is deport all of the people who have broken the law, which is, to simplify it, in we need to enforce the law as it was written and actually hold accountable the criminals in this country, right?
I don't disagree with you on that.
But I will give you would need to create a massive police force to do so. Agreed. Compare that to what is happening now. Okay, so let's say that's the proposal from Trump supporters, and we believe the most extreme position, and I think it's a fair assessment, is a massive deportation system, a massive expansion of government power to track down and deport 10 to 15 million people. Right now, not even an idea, not even a proposal.
Yes.
The left has an open border, bringing in 10 plus million people, and child sex change operations.
So this is, but I was about to say this. I think you're right. I think the asymmetry here is that that's just kind of like a bumper sticker that Trump supporters throw out.
Right.
But if they were to just be offered, hey, we'll build the wall and the influx will stop, they'd very clearly settle for that.
Exactly.
If we're talking about what's actually happening in reality versus what just their imagined desired positions are, yes, there's really no comparison.
And so the issue we're facing is moderate Americans, maybe slightly right-leaning. I don't even know if it's fair to say.
I don't know.
Colin Wright's meme about the left moving further and further left and forcing the middle to be called the center right is a great point.
Yes.
I'm going to stress this again. When the Trump base, the far right, simply says, hey, can we not have a rule banning people for speech? That is not even the right-wing position on misgendering. It's not. It's a centrist compromise. And the far left says, no, ban anyone who doesn't agree with my ideology.
Well, look, I mean, when the right, I'm old enough to remember when the right wing had real power over not just the political class, but also just over the culture. And it was immediately in the wake of 9/11.
Oh,
and they weren't just trying to say, hey, everyone, say what you want to say.
That's very different from Trump, though.
No. I'm not saying it's the same as Trump.
Fake too, because.
Well, look, I'm just saying at that point, the Dixie Chicks were getting, they were the victims of cancel culture, and Bill Maher.
They got canceled again by the left.
Yeah, well, yes, I know, because now it's for chicks, not Dixie, but whatever.
No, it was Dixie.
Oh, I thought it was
Dixie's it was a reference to antebellum.
Whatever. It's too stupid for me to keep up with. But look, Bill Maher got fired from ABC, and it wasn't from being canceled from the left. It was from being canceled from the right. I'm just saying that.
Do you remember what he said, though?
There is something that it's very easy when the other side. Look, listen, I don't even disagree with what you're saying. I'm just making the point that it's very easy when one side has all of the power for the other side who has less power to go, hey, we shouldn't impose power on the other one.
Right.
You know, but like, so that's part of the reason why right wingers are just saying like, hey, let's just not ban anyone, because they know all of the institutions are controlled by their enemies.
So we got some updates. Texas, Trump has won. I don't even know why I'm reading it. Alabama, Maine.
Arkansas, Maine.
Well,
Massachusetts.
Maine's interesting because they tried to remove him from the ballot.
Yeah, and
so,
well, that was obvious because they wanted to disenfranchise their own voters and prevent them from voting for Donald Trump.
to protect democracy.
To protect democracy.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's George W.
Colorado.
Bush,
Colorado is Trump is up 28 in Colorado with 32% in, so that's going to come next.
Nikki Haley.
Massachusetts. I mean, it's really Haley's projected 2% in Vermont, but you know, Vermont is stupid anyway.
In this map made by NBC News where they have Trump and Haley with different colors, I'm willing to bet that they actually did not even have a color code for Haley. And then when she won DC, the graphics guy's like, all right, I'll make it.
But he
think
like
they
just
keep it
shaded it up a little bit.
I was gonna say,
Right.
they keep
That's
it the
why
same
it's so
shade,
similar. It's
not
so it
blue
doesn't
or
look like
green.
she's getting massacred the way she is. I mean, this is rough. This girl is not pulling off whatever victory she
What is she
claimed to
doing?
think. I don't. Other than
listen.
just wasting donor money that could go down.
She's
to
wasting
get support
Democrat
again.
money primarily. I mean, it's
And
mostly
that's okay, I
Democrat money at this
guess.
point,
Listen,
isn't it?
she's gonna walk out of this and go get some job on the board of a finance company or a weapons company.
Maybe
and
they're going to make her a university president.
Yeah, she's
Or they'll
gonna
put
she's
her on
gonna
MSNBC.
Yeah, she's gonna walk into millions and millions of dollars for doing this. So that's the game. Unfortunately, that's the actual game. Look, Vivek called her out all the time for it, right? She left the
Boeing,
UN being like not having that much money. She got put on the board of Boeing, and I think was getting paid something from another weapons company. She got paid. Now she's doing their bidding, and she will be handsomely rewarded for it. As sad as that is,
She
to
represents
say.
the MSNBC right.
Yeah.
The people
Yes.
who used to be
Very well
conservative
said.
but only watch MSNBC.
No, but just and just even like the Republicans who come on MSNBC all day, every day to go, hey, I'm a Republican, and even I'm fed up with Donald Trump. And
Like
that's
The
just
View.
their whole role is to be like, look, even the conservative admits that the liberals are right. That's kind of the game here. And that's really what, at least we should understand what needs to be attacked. Is that this isn't really a left-right divide or a question of who's in the center or who's in the extremes. The question is that how do we deal with this incredibly corrupt system that is anti all of us? Whether you identify as left or right, you're still getting ripped off by this system. It doesn't even matter. Like you could be some champion in what you think is the left wing's culture war. Like you're like, I'm out here protesting for trans rights. You're just a dupe. You're being ripped off by inflation just like everyone else is. You're just a useful idiot.
Do you remember when there were protesters out of there were anti-mask protesters and Antifa came and attacked them?
Yeah.
There was also a protest in D.C. where it was stop corporate censorship, and Antifa came and attacked them. And I'm like, what about defending massive corporations makes you like anti-establishment? I was at a skate park, that's like 2 years ago, and it's a skate park. And there's a big Black Lives Matter spray painted on the ramps, and some kids were sitting by it. And I started busting out laughing. And I was like, which one of you idiots spray painted Amazon's corporate logo on the ramp? Oh, punk rock, Walmart, woohoo! Go buy
There
Walmart
is
boards.
something really funny about like the fact that it doesn't even give any of them pause that all these giant corporations are on their side. Like from your own ideological view, wouldn't that be like, wait, they're supposed to be against us? No, they're not supposed. And the other funny thing was in 2020 when the BLM riot like got out of control and they went and smashed up the CNN building, and then it was like the first time CNN went, hey, wait.
In Atlanta.
Like, but we're on
Yeah,
your
yeah.
side. We've been
wait.
laced. And you're like, yeah, they're just smashing stuff, dude. They're not really thinking about it.
Do you think
Right.
Tom Morello like rationalizes, or do you think he just lies to it? Like he just lies. Like he's or I should say, do you think he rationalizes it to himself, or do you think he knows what's really going on and is lying to everybody else?
I mean, my guess is he knows what's going on and is just lying. But I don't know. I'm not inside anyone else's head.
You know, it's funny because on the way here, we're listening to 90s alternative and System of a Down comes on and they have Prison Song. And I'm just like, I like System of a Down. I don't know them personally. They're not as bad as, I don't know them to be bad, actually. I know Rage Against the Machine is Rage on behalf of the machine because they've been very
that's for
active in
sure.
supporting the machine. But isn't it kind of funny that we have these bands that are extremely wealthy, massively supported, internationally famous, and they claim to oppose the machine, it's almost like the machine actually supported them the whole time.
Well, or at least they got sucked up into that thing that was the machine, and like, it was so like comical.
Well, the machine does manufacture things.
Well, but like there have these bands who have these songs, and they're just like, "Shut up! I won't do what you tell me to do. Hey guys, make sure to get your COVID vaccine."
No. Did you see which band was it where they were like, "Clean hands. We all have clean hands," and everyone's cheering for it?
There was this venue in Brooklyn.
Who was that?
I forget.
I don't like.
Yeah.
It's a German word in it. Kaiser, yeah.
Kaiser Chiefs.
Oh.
Do you guys
Aren't
remember
they
that
like
clip?
an Irish band or something?
I don't know. It's so disturbing.
And
Did you see the
was
video?
disturbing.
the line is "F you, I won't do what you tell me."
Yeah.
And I'm like, they really need to change that to "F you, you better do what we tell you."
Right.
Please give me direction because I don't know what to do with
Well,
it.
there was this venue in Brooklyn that I was like trying to go see something at one point, and they had this whole basically manifesto that you had to sign off on about social justice, and if you don't feel this way, then don't come to the venue. And I was like, okay, then I totally won't come to the venue. That's also fine. And I hate this band now for playing here. I don't even remember what band it was. They're off the playlist.
But isn't there, there's something so interesting to me about how like all of this stuff, like even if you trace it back to its actual like origin, and people can argue about whether this is like from the Frankfurt School or critical theory or like where exactly the intellectual kind of roots of all of this wokeism comes from. But there is something so interesting about how it did, at least to some degree, start as this really radical left-wing thought and then yet was embraced by every rich capitalist and every powerful government official in the country, and is now kind of being pushed on people, and that they took this thing and they realized how powerful it was to like divide everybody and insist that you sign up with their views and turn this. It's just, there's something like so interesting about that to me.
That was the compromise.
It's not
Their
just
compromise was like, we get to do capitalism, and sure, we'll hire extra people.
I don't even think it was. I guess to some degree that's true, right? Like the compromise was like almost like in the wake of Occupy Wall Street, the compromise was that JP Morgan goes, okay, look, here's the deal. We get to do everything we've been doing, and we will send our white executives to diversity
And
training.
we'll pay for your abortions, and we'll cut your kids' dicks off. That's fine.
Yeah, I guess that's like the thing, right?
And we'll
but
add
at the
like
same
extra,
time,
diverse people to our board per the law in California.
And in this kind of weird sick compromise where, which by the way is, anyone, if you're really interested in this, go read The Progressive Era by Murray Rothbard, because this is actually the story of the original Progressive Era as well. That this is the whole story, is that there were these kind of good, at least possibly well-intentioned leftists who were like progressives, and they were like, hey, we should have a managed economy so it does more for the little guy and less for the big guy. And then basically all of the robber barons were like, oh, yeah, we totally should have a managed economy. We'll be the ones to manage it. And then they just basically took it over and made it was like a right-wing coup against the left-wing idea in some sense, broadly speaking. But today, think about how much that is literally what led to the transformation
But isn't that also...
let me just say that's what led to the transformation of the left wing being the pro-war group. That they're now all going, well, we have to put Ukrainian flags up, or we have to, you know what I mean? And like,
the current
because
thing.
it's like, because they got trained to just follow orders and be obedient.
But that's what our schooling was doing. Our schooling for decades has been teaching people to be managed. That teaches people how to like follow instructions, how to sit quietly. Like I'll never forget when
way more than decades.
When my son got in trouble in like kindergarten at circle time, and the teacher called me in, and it was like super serious. And the teacher was like, your son won't sit still during circle time. And I was like, okay, what's he doing? Well, he's running in circles. And I was like, so like he's doing, like it is circle time. What's the problem? You know what I mean? Like he is taking circles, and it's part of his activity, and he's running around like he's a little boy. That's what little boys do. They run around.
I gotta make sure I get a correction here. Sorry, real quick. Because someone super chatted this. John, how do you pronounce his name? Dolmayan. John Dolmayan, the drummer for System of a Down, is a vocal Trump supporter. So shout out to him for standing up for his beliefs. It's not even about being a Trump supporter. While I'll shout him out, but he's said people have
Probably
attacked him
taking
over
a lot
it.
of hell
He's
for that.
getting a lot of heat for it. So mad respect.
But I do
just because
think
it's a
that- I do
ballsy
think that,
position
like,
to take in his world.
on the sort of
Absolutely.
on the sort of conservative side or the more thoughtful side, or even if you want to call it centrist or whatever, we spend so much time trying to dig into where these ideas came from when tracking the history of it. You know, Chris Rufo does that. He's excellent at it. James Lindsay does that, like really stellar at digging into that stuff.
Jordan Peterson.
Figuring all out exactly where it came from. We can isolate it and we can pinpoint it, but why can't we just rip it out by the roots? And why can't we make a stand and say what it is we do believe in and what we do want
Social
going
media.
forward?
Well, I would just say,
That's the reason?
I think the
So
much
the-
more
the-
interesting question, and I'm not saying it's not an interesting question, like where the ideological roots of this come from. I just think, and this is my big push, I think a much more interesting question is not where did it come from. My question is, why did every major corporation, every political class, Hollywood, why did every
Because we
powerful...
didn't Bud Light them.
Well, hold on.
We didn't
Why
Bud Light them. That's
but
why.
that's not the point. That's a totally different question. That's a question of why didn't we stop it? I'm saying, why did every powerful person in the United States of America embrace it at the same time and start jamming it down our throats?
There's an answer. Social media.
I don't think that's the answer.
You look at LexisNexis data. In every country on the planet, with the rise of social media, these terms began to take hold. Now, there's a root to why these ideas in particular, but these weren't the only ideas getting spread. I've done this rant a million times, so I'll keep it quick. But when Facebook first switched to an algorithmic model, the number one form of content was police brutality videos. Several websites emerged that just started publishing nothing but
Cop Block and Free Thought Project.
And these were some of the most trafficked websites in the world, because Facebook said, whatever people share, we show more of. And it was rudimentary. YouTube, you know what the number one content was on YouTube in the early days? As long as the thumbnail was a woman in a bikini, I'm not joking, it would get more views, because YouTube said, if it gets clicks, show it to more people, it'll get more clicks. People said, okay, whatever my video is, make the thumbnail a bikini woman and it'll get clicked on, and then YouTube promotes me.
Right.
They started to refine their algorithms. Some ideas got deleted. There was around this time a rise in white nationalist content alongside intersectional content, and advertisers went, we can't be next to white nationalists. We're taking our ads. They said, okay, they said, we'll get rid of that content. No advertiser cared about justice and responsibility and caring about our neighbors. So around 2008 was when we saw the emergence of Facebook, Twitter, and all these other platforms and the rise of the algorithms. LexisNexis data shows us the emergence of words like white privilege, racism, etc., colonizer, appeared in every newspaper in every Western country around the exact same time in a massive hockey stick.
Yes. Okay, so let me give you a counter to the fact that it's just social media and algorithms, okay? So it's really around 2012 when those Nexus charts shoot up. And it's not just what was going on YouTube or other social media, but we're talking about the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times,
Yeah, it was in all of them.
major newspapers.
And you know why?
Well,
For the New York Times to get shares on Facebook, they needed these search terms.
Listen.
Vice famously had an article that said something like, trans women of color, victims of police brutality, exemplifies the Black Lives Matter movement. And it crammed as many of these words as possible into a single headline, and everyone laughed.
Listen, this is why I don't agree with this, okay? So I do not believe that the goal here was clicks and views and likes. And think about it like this. Who was the number one show in cable news before he got fired? Tucker Carlson. And there are all of these stories that he would touch that nobody else would touch that would get, listen, just imagine this, right? You're a cable news show. Let's say you were going to do a show all about what really happened with Jeffrey Epstein and who's really covering it up. Let's say you were going to do a show about who's been vaccine injured from the COVID vaccine. You would get enormous views.
Amy Roback on ABC News wanted to do the story. It was shut
Yes,
down.
I know, right. But I'm saying, so there are stories that would get an enormous amount of clicks, an enormous amount of views, but they're shut down because they go against the powerful. So my point is just that the reason why the New York Times and the Washington Post and these major publications started pushing this stuff, I do not believe was because it was getting more views. I think this was an intentional distraction campaign that was following Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party movement, and the fact that Barack Obama was up for re-election and had continued the George W. Bush policies for his entire administration. And they had to make something that would go like, look, people are very upset with this failure. This is what we have to throw at them.
It's too reductive.
I don't think so.
So when I worked for Fusion, when they said, we are going to be nice. So when they pitched me, this is ABC News Univision. They said, we want to be nice Vice. Will you come and work with us? I said, what will you give me? They said, we're going to give you a ridiculous amount of money and a massive budget. What's your goal? And they said, everything you already do it here. We don't like that Vice does the weird sex, drug stuff, but we like the rock and roll. So you bring that edgy, on the street journalism to us and we're good. 6 to 8 months later, they were full woke. They brought in a new editor-in-chief and he changed his Twitter profile photograph to a picture of a black fist that said "Down with whiteness."
If someone tells you they like rock and roll,
and the reason why they did it explicitly in the meetings I was at with the executives of this company was, young people are progressive, and if we don't adhere to what they want, we will get erased. In order to succeed as a media company, you target the young people and you age with them. By the time they're 35, we're the dominant media. And I said, you're wrong. You're being tricked into thinking these things are what young people want, and I can prove otherwise. And so we did a marketing campaign. We helped them get some non-woke content, massive amounts of views. The president told me explicitly, you're the only person at this company who actually gets the views. The issue is, you're too old. I was how old was I at this time? This is 24. This is 10 years ago.
You must have been in your 20s, right?
28, 29. And they said, we are looking at 18-year-olds. And so here, I'll give you another example. Mic.com, M-I-C. Do you know what they started as? Ron Paul.
Really?
It was two libertarian brothers started a Ron Paul libertarian site and they posted police brutality. Why did they shift their business model? Well, I happen to know this because I actually went to their office headquarters and met with one of their heads of development who said, this gets traffic. We need the views. So when we switch, when we're doing police brutality and we're all libertarian, and she wasn't talking about like the company at the time, but this is their founding. She's like, when we do anti-racist, social justice and feminism, it gets shared on Facebook. When you do conservatism, Facebook was deleting it. We learned this from Gizmodo's reporting in 2016, that employees at Facebook were actively removing this stuff. So you have what I refer to as Jack Dorsey plugging his sewer system into his own mouth. They created these algorithms that promoted social justice. The first content to go viral was police brutality because no one likes police brutality. Then what we ended up seeing was, if you have a video that says racism bad, you get X views. If you have sexism bad, you get Y views. But if you have racism and sexism bad, you get XY. It's exponential. So a company like Mic.com shifted their narrative in line with what was getting them traffic. And the best example of how this works is you look at Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney's early TikTok content, safaris with animals. Why now?
Cute. Yeah.
What happened to Dylan Mulvaney that it turned into day 900 of being a woman?
Because that's what people were responding to.
Chasing after the views, so evolved the content and created this as algorithms pushed it. You then end up with people like Jack Dorsey, who said this is the free speech wing of the free speech party. But after he builds this community on social media promoting only one ideology and downranking anything else like conservatism, because it was offensive to him and his friends, it was offensive to him and his friends because they were gargling on the sewage of their own network.
Okay, so first of all, you brought up Ron Paul, and so it's incumbent on me to say that he is the greatest living American hero. And everybody should go Google him and look him up. And if you're not familiar with him, go read everything he's ever written and listen to everything he's ever said. So that part I will concede. I'm just saying, my argument is not that nobody online has ever put out content that will just get more clicks, or that even like going woke, crazy woke, or crazy anti-woke won't increase views. So what you're talking about was absolutely a part of this transformation. I'm just saying that it's also true that the New York Times and the Washington Post, and by the way, the CIA and the Federal Reserve and the Obama administration, which in this year, in 2012 it was, passed their first big like DEI initiative or whatever. It wasn't just coming from the bottom up. It was also coming from the top down, and that there was this weird convergence there. And my question is just like, why the top down part? And I'm saying that there was also, while there wasn't, there's no, listen, you still see it today. Every day since Twitter, like people are monetizing their Twitter under Elon Musk, you see them just kind of post the most provocative thing that's going to get them more clicks. But I'm saying there's something else at work here also,
and
which is that the top down, I believe there was a targeted campaign that Obama had come in and promised a repudiation of the Bush policies. He had failed on them. He had continued all of them, and he pivoted toward this culture war.
I believe that is hyper-focused on one particular element. The fact that Obama wanted this narrative would imply that powerful Democrats went to their allies and said, focus on this, which does not have the effect of shifting everything overnight. The overnight shift came from algorithms. And the reason why the executives this is an ABC Univision joint venture with $300 million behind it. I worked in the ABC News building alongside all of them. And the president of the company said, we're going after young people. Their marketing people came to them. These meetings are fascinating. One time the marketing guy said, women share more. Women share more than men, and anger generates more shares than anything else. So what do we need? We need to piss off women.
Need angry women. That's what America needs.
100%.
Wow.
Women are more likely to share content on Facebook, and anger is what drives them. What makes women angry? Social justice. So they hyper-focused and prioritized it. This is a $300 million media company with the president and their head of marketing telling me, like, look, man, look at the data. We do a video on trans issues, we get a lot of views. And I'm like, you do a video on any other hot topic issue, you'll get the same amount of views. I got more views talking about Fukushima when the Fallout video came out, when the Fallout video game came out, than you got on all your social justice stuff. Your marketing people are telling you young people are wanting this, but you're eating your own refuse.
That's right.
Look, I went to Vice. Before I left Vice, I told all of these companies the exact same thing. And it's obvious now why Vice completely collapsed in on itself. It's obvious why Fusion collapsed in on itself. They were convinced that the screeching activists who didn't actually care about this stuff were the future. They were convinced that these buzzwords that were appearing on social media represented what young people wanted. And I kept telling them they were wrong. And so what happens now? Both those companies basically don't exist. Vice is a skeleton limping around, struggling to breathe. It can't, it's a skeleton. And Fusion went bankrupt, and I think they went bankrupt. I don't know, they ended up laying everybody off and shutting down. And then what was left was some skin of a website, and then they got rid of that too.
Well, also that whole thing did something really bad for women. I mean, that didn't help women at all, marketing to them that way, because it was the redirection of, a maternal instinct toward a compassion in social justice that has been completely destructive for American women across the board. So
in like 2018, there was a report that came out accusing a bunch of people who are like moderate and conservative and libertarian of being far right. YouTube panicked because they had lost ad revenue and then immediately nuked the recommendations for all of these channels. But it wasn't ideological, it was specific channels. They didn't downrank terms. Immigration was still just fine, but it was specific channels that all of a sudden found they weren't getting recommended anymore, and the analytics dropped off entirely.
Well, okay, but there's another huge element that happened in there, right? So basically, the internet very quickly went from being, forget the algorithm point that you were making, which I do think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. But the internet very quickly went from being kind of the wild, wild west, where people could kind of say whatever they wanted to say, broadly speaking, not completely. There were some people who got banned, but it was very rare. And what happened was, after Donald Trump won the presidency in 2016, there was this mad scramble from the establishment to explain away why he had won. And they landed on a few ridiculous answers. One of them was the insane Hillary Clinton op-ed lies that he was involved in a conspiracy with the Russian government, which then the intelligence agencies jumped on and ran with for years. And then that kind of connected to how Putin had interfered in the election and spread fake news. By the way, this is something a lot of people forget. Fake news was not a term Donald Trump made up.
Right.
This was a term they made up,
right.
and then he reappropriated it and turned it around on them. But they were the ones who said, there's fake news, fake news, fake news. And the Congress hauled all of the big tech execs in front of them for the first time ever. Now this is a regular thing, but this was the first time this has ever happened before in 2016 when they made Jack Dorsey, who was running Twitter at the time, and Mark Zuckerberg and all these guys come from, and they explicitly threatened all of them if they didn't crack down on fake news, that they were going to regulate these companies and break up these companies and ruin everything they have. The United States of America's federal government forced this kind of censorship regime on big tech platforms. And I'm not claiming that a lot of these big tech platforms didn't agreeably go along with it, but that is where the origin of it was.
I will say, I think it is algorithmic. That being said, it is a fact that, and we now know this, CIA, FBI, intelligence agencies were giving instruction on a weekly basis to these big tech platforms.
What was that thing called? What was the operation? What is it called?
I don't remember the operation name, but I remember when...
Are you talking about back in the day?
No,
Mockingbird?
yeah.
But no. That's a long time ago. I'm saying recently we discovered that like Vijaya Gadde was in regular communication with,
Right.
with intelligence agencies.
Oh, with like the Twitter files and all of that kind of
The
stuff.
one big regret I have from doing that show with Rogan is I often say, like, I didn't really prepare for anything. Rogan asked me to come and do the show, and I just knew this stuff and was able to talk to them. But man, if I really sat down, researched, and thought about it, it would have been very obvious for any journalist to say, Tim, ask them if the government is working with them in any way. And I didn't even...
Yeah. And by the way, dude, for the record, you did an incredible job on that show. I still think that's one of the best moments you've ever had in your career. It was amazing to watch. It was amazing. Well, it was. Look, dude, it was incredible. It was incredible to watch them totally crumble over your very basic, just being like your obvious bias. But just imagine
Tim
Tim
if I
Pool
said,
from today could take a time machine and go back and just give Tim Pool from that show a few notes. Just like, hey, dude, just so you know, it's going to come out in a few years that they're totally in bed with the CIA and the FBI and they're getting money from these organizations.
Could you imagine?
And being instructed. And then you could just go in there and you could ask them the direct question and get them on the record, so to speak. It would be amazing, dude.
It was really amazing how unprepared they were for the conversation. They assumed Joe was going to bring in some like MAGA guy. And then they were just like, well, Carl Benjamin said this. And I was like, yeah, he should probably be banned for that. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, I get it. People break the rules. But I think one of the big takeaways was when they said, we have this misgendering policy. And I pointed out, conservatives have an inverted view of misgendering. So you've sided with one of them.
Well, because the way it went down, if you guys remember this, is that they said, no, we don't have a left-wing bias. And then Tim goes, well, you have this misgendering policy. And they go, well, yeah, it's wrong to misgender people. And Tim was like, that's a left-wing bias.
That is a
like that is bias, because the right-wing perspective is that this would be misgendering.
Yeah.
And so, but look, I'm
just to stress, the one regret I have is I did not ask, have you, the first question is, do you as a business entity have communications with government officials?
Yeah.
Then
No,
say,
look, that would listen.
But then
I wouldn't have thought to ask that question.
They say,
either
well, of course we do. All companies do. I mean, there's regulators. Okay. My next question is, do you have communication with officials working out of Washington, D.C.? And they say, yes. Okay. Do you have conversations with law enforcement? Then they'd say, well, law enforcement will contact us periodically. And then that would open up so law enforcement is giving you instruction on removing certain posts for certain reasons. Yeah. And the answer is absolutely yes.
Okay. So let me, again, and it's not, I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. But I just think there's this other element. And I just want like two very quick points, okay? Number one, and I think we could all see this, where there are these accounts, like say, Alex Jones, Andrew Tate, like a lot of these guys. Listen, sure. Nick Fuentes, Gavin McInnes, a lot of these guys who were enormously popular, who drove the algorithm, but they get plucked out of it.
Right.
Okay? So it's not just the algorithm driving this. There's also then this bigger hand that comes in that then picks who the algorithmic winners and losers are going to be. And I would also point out that, by the way, Vivek Ramaswamy's book, Woke Inc., I believe it's called. Yeah. He goes through a lot of this stuff where it's not, look, they have there's this weird thing where like with BlackRock, you know, that they'll be pushing like all the DEI stuff, but then you have these state governments, and basically the state governments control the pensions for every government worker in the state. So if you think about every government, the only ones who have pensions anymore, you know, government workers, they're controlling hundreds of billions of dollars, and then they will put these rules that say we'll only invest it with this financial company if you insist on DEI regulations and all this stuff. My point is that it's not just coming from the bottom up.
I agree.
There's a huge amount of pressure from the top down on
I agree.
all of this stuff.
One quick point before we go to Super Chats. Riley Moore, the state treasurer for West Virginia, has cut off banks that have ESG policies because one of the reasons is they've shut down investing in fossil fuels, which is a huge economic driver in West Virginia. So he was like, you will no longer get government contracts from us.
Well, good for him.
I think he said it was U.S. Bank that went, okay, then we won't do it because your money's more important to us.
So that's, by the way, you were talking about before, how to fight
institutions.
back. That's a good way of how to fight back.
We're going to go to Super Chat. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, head over to timcast.com, click join us. Become a member because we're going to have a members-only show coming up for you at 10 p.m. tonight. But for now, we will read your Super Chats. Christopher Lambert says, nope. Well, you actually were first, so you need to give yourself more credit. All right, Tim.
Yeah, that's a very low confidence first place Super Chat. Come
Just
on.
not going to get it. You got it.
I don't know why I'm in the mood to argue. I disagree. Yeah.
Yes. Tim Jake says, Louisiana became the 28th state with constitutional carry yesterday when the governor signed the bill. Shout out. I have another.
Hell yeah.
I have another regret on one of my appearances on Rogan, and it's when I correctly said that half the country is now constitutional carry, and Joe said something like that can't be correct. Jamie pulled that up, and Jamie pulled up a wrong source, which said 13 states, and I was like, what? I was like, was I wrong about that? I was like, I guess I was wrong about that. I guess I must have been assuming like geographic size or something. I don't know. I missed it.
Dude,
I fact-checked myself as soon as the show was over, and I was like, I was right the whole time.
Dude, it's
28 states.
I've been on Rogan a few times where like I say something and then Rogan goes, Jamie, pull that up. And you just have this thing where you're like, Jamie, don't you screw me on this one, man. Like you make sure you get the right source on this. Good guy though.
Well,
Love
I think
Jamie.
what happened was he Googled
You
it.
have to say that, otherwise he'll make you look bad.
Yeah.
He Google searched constitutional carry states, and the default Google box said 13. Instead of him actually going to the wiki for constitutional carry and seeing the breakdown of all the new states that it signed on. It was an old source. And so I regretted that because I'm like, it's very important that people know. At the time, it was 25 states, and Florida was about to sign their bill, which would have made 26. Now we're at 28. Shout outs.
That's listen, man, we're searching for white pills here. That's pretty awesome.
To clarify, Florida's bill is permitless concealed, I believe. I don't know.
It is concealed in Florida.
Permitless concealed, but not open carry.
All right, listen, I will say that open carry, look, from my perspective, it's your absolute right to open carry, but I will also say concealed is so much more important. Like just strategically, it's more important. Open carry, listen, it's your right to open carry anywhere you want to. It's just kind of like, I don't really recommend it, and it can lead to a lot of different... Well, look, you got situations like, if you remember with... what was the guy's name out there in Texas? I believe it was in Austin. Garrett Foster.
Right.
I think was his name, right? So he's a Black Lives Matter protester, and he's got an AR-15 on his.
This is the guy that got shot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's got an AR-15 on his shoulder, and a car turns around the road, and the Black Lives Matter protesters are blocking the road, and the car starts honking and starts trying to drive into the crowd. So he runs over, gets his gun in low ready position, and the former military guy in the car shoots him and kills him dead. You know?
But don't. Look, if you're open carrying, don't hold your weapon at low ready at someone.
I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying that there is this problem where, hey, look, okay, before holding it at low ready, right? Technically, it is your right to walk with these people and have an open. But once you're in a mob of people and you have a gun, you do kind of create this situation for someone coming up to you where they're like, I have to treat you like you might be about to aggress on me. I'm just saying personally. I'm not saying what your right is.
I disagree.
Okay, well, I'm just saying not what your right is. I'm saying what I personally like is concealed carry.
Right.
If anything goes down, I can pull this out and be ready to use it. So I don't have to pull it out until I'm ready to use it. So, that's just my feeling.
Regardless of whether or not Black Lives Matter had shot several people. I mean, in Provo, Utah, a driver got shot. So anybody who's approaching Black Lives Matter must approach it as if they are concealed armed.
That's true.
And that being said, you're not. I love how they have these when they do these legal breakdowns of concealed versus open carry. They put not applicable for long guns, and I'm like, you can absolutely conceal a long gun. Like, spare me, dude. But in the event, he did say have a trench coat with his rifle underneath one of the sides. It was concealed. When he decided to grab it and bring it to low ready,
yes, you're right.
That changed everything.
Well, I believe the guy did get convicted.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Which was crazy. Yeah, which is crazy. Which is crazy because a mob surrounds your car and a guy comes. Imagine you
with
have
a history of killing people.
Yeah, and a guy comes at you with a gun.
Even if there wasn't a history of killing people, that's a good point too. But a mob surrounds your car and a guy has an AR-15 at low ready and you got a handgun on you.
I think it was an AK.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
But you kind of almost have no choice at that point. Like, you cannot, I mean, dude, from low ready to is nothing.
Low ready.
This is a split second.
He was holding the weapon.
Yes. It's a split second before you're dead.
They call it zipping up your target. You don't actually start shooting. You start shooting right away.
It's totally unreasonable to say that you have to sit here and trust that person isn't about to murder you, rather than saying, I can't. It's almost like going.
But that's like
all you got to do to make the argument to say, when a police officer is facing someone holding a rifle at low ready, and then the average person goes, you're right.
Well, not the average person in that group.
Right.
But yeah, the rest of us probably.
We got to read more super chats though. So let's grab some more. Let's see what we got here. Hi, Guy Superfly says, every single problem we are having is the result of government being way too big. Love you, Dave. God bless you.
That's such a good point, man. And by the way, listen, I'm not going to go off on it for too long, but it is absolutely, totally true that the whole Donald Trump drain the swamp thing, it's like, well, what is the swamp? The swamp is that our centralized federal government spends over $6 trillion a year, and that all the richest people in the world are connected to the political class. Yep. If you want to drain the swamp, the answer is drastic cuts in government spending.
All right. I'm not your buddy, Guy says, much respect to Dave Smith, but right now is all hands on deck moment to save not just the U.S., but the world with Trump. We're walking a fine line with chaos. You going to vote for Trump?
No. Listen, everyone, first of all, voting is ridiculous. It's all an illusion. But
so you're not going to vote?
No, I might. But I'll vote for as of right now, I'll vote for the Libertarian Party candidate. But look, I know people will be
RFK
Jr.? No. No. But look, I know everyone say right now is an all hands on deck moment. I'm not disagreeing with you about the severity of the moment. I'm disagreeing with you about participating in this ridiculous ritual of the state that is democracy and pretending like that's actually you having an effect in the moment. It's not. Listen, Donald Trump, if you're saying Donald Trump's going to save us, like, I know we've argued about this on the podcast before. Donald Trump needs to demonstrate to me that he's actually learned something from the last time around.
Fair point. But I know it's going to happen.
No new wars. Whole bunch of the old ones, though.
Sure. And timelines for getting out of them. I mean,
one. But yes,
that was very,
Abraham Accords.
You know,
the Abraham Accords were garbage. Come on, Tim, we've argued about this already. The Abraham Accords are a huge part of why there's the war in Israel and Gaza right now.
I get it. But I tell you,
but you guys are wrong.
So everyone who's listening,
it is.
I know what's going to happen. It's when's election day? It's November 3rd or what is it? Is it the 5th?
I don't know, something like that.
I know what's going to happen. Dave Smith is going to be wearing a trench coat, glasses with the fake nose and fake mustache. As he sneaks into the polling place, looks around.
Who's this guy?
And then when he thinks no one's looking, he's going to press Trump, and then he's going to slink back into the shadows and disappear.
It's all that, except I just write in Ron Paul, and then I leave.
If it's all an illusion, why have a political party?
Well, because look,
why run for office?
Okay, so there's several purposes. Like, number one is but entering the political process helps you spread a message and helps you alert people to things.
But why show your consent to a system that you don't think is worthwhile?
Well, I'm not saying I'm showing my consent to a system I don't think is worthwhile. I'm saying I'm entering an arena to point out that I think the system isn't worthwhile. By the way, I do think that local elections can be very
system to do that.
right.
We get it. We get it. That's not.
So what point does that make?
Like, why be involved in it if you don't think it's if you think it's fake? Why be involved in it?
Because I just said I think it's fake, and I want people to understand that it's fake.
Getting up on stage while everyone's debating and saying this is a waste of time. I get it, but we'll read more super chats.
Sure.
We got. I'll give a shout out to Troy Rubert. He says, check out the program Cons, Cults, and Kidnapping. Interesting. Let's see what else we have. The Authentic Hydro PX. Oh, he's the real one. He says, Tim, I can't believe you would insult sixth graders by comparing them to Bill Maher's intelligence on your 4 p.m. segment. Agreed. Moving on. Yeah, I basically said, I've had people ask me if I would go on like real time. Not from them. They've never reached out to me and said, we'd love to have you on the show. But I've had people who are like in their circle and have worked with them saying like, we'd love to get you on that show and we'll reach out to them and make the connection. And I said, no, I will not go on that show because it's like for the same reason, Dave, like if someone asked you to go debate the president of the sixth grade class at the local public school, would you do it? You'd be like, what's the point? Like who?
Yeah, I think look, I probably would still do it if they asked me because I'd still be like.
He hates sixth graders. He wants them to feel bad about themselves.
I want to wreck these sixth graders.
No, I assume you see it as like a chance to evangelize about libertarianism.
Well, like maybe because like it's like okay, let me see if I could beat this game and get some good points out and maybe make some people think. But the thing that makes me not want to is that there are these things where sometimes on Bill Maher's show there'll just be these moments where someone's like making a point and then Bill Maher will just like. He'll almost just like say a slogan, and then the audience goes, bah!
Right,
and then you're just like,
that's what I'm talking
dude,
about.
come on. What? He even gets annoyed at his audience sometimes. This is the crazy thing about Bill Maher is that it drives him nuts that his audience is so stupid.
This is the point I'm making. If you go into a sixth grade classroom, and you're arguing taxes, and you're saying let's talk about what a flat tax could look like. Let's do a sales tax only system. And then the other sixth grade kid is sitting there with a smirk on his face, and he goes, hey, you're stupid, and you smell like farts. Then the whole class erupts, and they're all laughing, and you're like,
yeah,
guys,
this is not a good system.
So when Dennis Prager goes on the show and says that the official position of the left today is that men menstruate, they all bust out laughing and hooting like seals clapping, door, without even fact checking, without looking into it. They all laugh and say, haha, he's so dumb. And I'm like, what is the point of going in there? And I'll tell you this. Many people make the argument, yeah, but you're on this big show and everyone can see and you can prove them wrong. No, you can't. Because when Bill Maher, as the leader of the show, says something insanely stupid, like he did with, fortunately, Badia was there. But when the audience all laughs and when everyone laughed at Dennis Prager, the reinforcement in the mind of the audience is, wow, this conservative guy, Dennis Prager, is really, really stupid. And the first impression that anybody would have with Prager is that guy's insane and everyone was laughing at him. Don't put yourself in that position. Now, Club Random, I would go on. I would sit down in a chair with just Bill Maher, and I would be like, Bill, can I go through a list of all the things you're wrong about? And that's funny because I used to watch Bill Maher all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too.
And now it's just like, he's retired. Yeah. He doesn't pay attention. He doesn't read the news.
Well, I get your point, and it's especially from your perspective where you're somebody who's built up an audience that's, I mean, I don't remember what Bill Maher's ratings were last I checked, but about 1 million. Yeah. So you're certainly comparable, maybe bigger than what his audience is, but whatever. Let's just say for the sake of argument.
He's once a week and we're 5 times a week.
So yes.
Raw numbers
obviously, your raw numbers, you're orders of magnitude above him, but just for whatever the audience, because I assume a lot of people listen to every episode of your show, so whatever. But the point is, just for the sake of argument, saying you have comparable numbers, but you're sitting here and having a conversation for hours where ideas can actually be flushed out, where it's not just like, oh, here's a quick segment. I'll do a 10-minute interview with audience, reactions in the middle. It's just a different thing.
Here's the big difference. If someone were to claim Jack Posobiec said he wants to overthrow democracy, we played the clip. Here's the clip from. Let's see what they said. He just goes on a show, reads a card, and says, "I can't believe that happened." So it's just it's archaic, I guess. It's an old system.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And Club Random is the new system, so that would be cool.
Right, and we've invited him in many ways and offered to compromise, and his people always say no.
Yeah.
So he was coming to DC, and we were like, we'd love to have him on the show. He said he's unavailable. I said, I totally get it. you don't want to do a podcast when you're about to do a comedy show. And then they were like, yeah, maybe another time. I said, well, let us know your future availability. We'd love to have Bill on the Culture War podcast, sit down. And they said, unfortunately, he's not going to be on the East Coast. And we said, we'll come to the West Coast. And they were like, and then stopped responding. That was it. So shout out to Dan Crenshaw as well, who also bailed on us twice and then stopped responding to our emails. And we were nice. We were
Dan Crenshaw, by the way, he hangs out in my YouTube. I thought this was just a fake guy being pretending he's Dan Crenshaw. And then my producer was like, no, this is the real Dan Crenshaw. And he just hangs out in my YouTube comments, like arguing with people sometimes. So, hey, Dan Crenshaw, I'll have you on too anytime.
He won't do it. And
debate me, Dan Crenshaw.
I think the issue with someone like Dan Crenshaw is anybody who truly believes what they're saying would love to debate you.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I know what I'm talking about. I will sit down and I will tell you. Anybody who knows what they're saying is bunk will run from the camera and run from the microphone because they know they can't defend incorrect ideas.
Well, and also I'm not like inviting you on like a Bill Maher type situation where the whole audience is on my side and you get 20 minutes to talk. I'm saying like no time limit. I will debate you for as long as you want on whatever platform you want. So I'd be happy to do it.
Have you been on Bill Maher before?
Bill Maher?
Have you been on Real Time?
No.
Could
Never.
you imagine? I'm just thinking about what it would be like if you and Bill Maher sat down.
It'd be great.
It would be humiliating for him.
Well, listen, the first thing I'll tell you this. Here's the first thing I'd have to start with, okay? When I was 16, either 16 or 17 years old, so this is back in the 90s, I got a TV VCR in my room, which doesn't say, but in the 90s, that was going to get you laid. You know what I mean? It was like a big deal at the time. And I got it, and I didn't have cable, but I had an antenna TV, and we just got the networks. And I found on ABC, Channel 7 in New York City, Politically Incorrect at night. And Politically Incorrect to me, I watched it at 17, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. That there was this like political comedian who was being funny and also making like good points. And it had a huge impact on me. Like it's what I ended up, becoming in my life. So I give Bill Maher this credit. Like there's something about him that I kind of like respect, but yeah, I'd debate him in a second because he's wrong about so many things.
I don't even know how he would handle a debate with you. He'd be like, I don't know about that. I don't know.
Well,
about
he
that.
starts.
I don't know about that.
There'd be a lot of stuff he just doesn't know about, and then he'd do a lot of like, "Oh, come on, that's ridiculous. Ah, you're one of those guys." Like that's kind of what he does. But I think we could have an interesting conversation. I'd be down to do it even if it wasn't a debate. I would just sit down and talk to him, But like he's I don't think it's going to happen. Don't hold your breath.
All right, let's read some more super chats. We got a Siri Design saying Nikki Haley and whoever is backing her knows something we don't. She might be inept, but there's something else going on.
Yeah,
here.
it feels
Agreed.
like that.
I completely agree.
It's just too nonsensical to be happening without that.
Right, there was a shadow campaign in 2020. I don't know what the shadow campaign is in 2024, but I believe there is one.
Look, Nikki Haley very obviously she's not running a campaign in the way you think a campaign is run. She's not speaking to the voters.
Right.
She's speaking to a donor class.
She's speaking to the CIA.
And yes. And
Do you think she's going to drop out tomorrow? What are the odds right now?
I think there's.
Because we have like 11 states reporting.
I think there's a good chance. I think it'd be very hard. It'd be very hard for her. I think her bet was that.
It's up to the donors.
Her bet was that something would happen with Trump by now. Yes, I agree. It's up to the donors. Look, Nikki Haley very clearly is taking marching orders. She's not making these decisions herself. She's doing what her handlers are telling her to do. And that is going to guarantee, mark my words, she will end up in a very cushy position one way or another in the next year.
MSNBC host or CNN host?
It might be that. It might be the board of a financial company. It might just be giving speeches to banks for $500,000 a speech. But she will be in a cushy position.
We got another one. This is breaking news actually from Justin G. Breaking. Texas just called for Jeb Bush in surprise upset. Promises guac for all. Wow, that's surprising.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, surprising.
The guac and queso vote in Texas is a really big deal.
Isn't it funny that it's been almost 10 years and Jeb will still be the meme?
Dude, you know what's crazy is that before, I know people can't, things move so fast, no one remembers. Before he ran against Trump, number one, he was the front runner for a little while. before Trump came in. And before that, he was the respected member of the Bush family who was like supposed to be the smart one, who was a really good governor and all of this. And then Trump just took his soul. God, I'll tell you, my favorite thing about Donald Trump is just what he does to all the worst people in the country.
Oh, when he said your brother lied?
It's just beautiful.
It was so much fun. I was laughing.
It was amazing. And look what he's doing to Nikki Haley right now. Like what he just does to all of us. Look, think about how strong DeSantis seemed as a candidate when he first jumped in. And it's just like, yeah, okay. But really? You want to wrestle with a pit bull? Okay.
All right.
Let's see how you come out.
Let's grab this one. Dr. Tran says, Operation Mockingbird has become infested with so many leftists that we can't take it seriously anymore. The Overton window has gone too far left. I do want to give a shout out. Referring to the corporate press as Operation Mockingbird is a good way to do it.
It's not bad.
So instead of saying the corporate press, we'll just call them all Operation Mockingbird from now on.
Yeah.
That's a good name for them.
I agree.
Let's grab some more super chats. What do we have here? Let's see. I don't know what that one's about. Some people are pointing out Trump is winning in Texas. It's fantastic. Glad to hear it. We will move on a little bit. Mad Max says Nikki Haley is the deep state's neocon warrior princess, wet dream candidate. She's the political succubus.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. Run Bio, shouted again, says John Dolmayan, the drummer for System of a Down, is a Trump supporter, took a lot of flack over it. Shout out. Yeah, that's why I said I don't know that System of a Down is bad at all. I'm just saying it's funny that there were so many anti-establishment bands in the late 90s, 2000s that were supported by the establishment. But I like System of a Down. I don't know. I like them a little bit more.
Yeah, they had a bunch of good songs. It was just, I think there was like during the COVID thing, I saw a thing where they were like supporting the thing. So it was just kind of like, oh, well, what the hell? Oh, no, maybe that was Rage Against the Machine.
That was
actually.
Rage.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Not
Yeah, The
System of a
Offspring
Down.
is the worst.
Yeah.
The absolute worst. Yeah. They fired their drummer because his doctor said you can't get the vaccine. And they were like, don't care. And there were other bands that were getting medical exemption and the venues were allowing them to play. So went from being my favorite band since I was a kid to my least favorite band and some of the most despicable people you can think of. But it is a great honor in my life that the first song I ever learned how to play on the guitar is The Kids Aren't All Right by The Offspring, written by Noodles of The Offspring, who has me blocked on Twitter now.
Wow.
That's an arc I never saw. I never expected. If you came to me when you're a kid and be like, that song you're learning, one day that man will hate you. Yeah. I'd be like, really?
Wow. Marina Navratilova blocked me on Twitter the other day. And I was like, what the hell? What's that about?
Isn't that crazy? Just like, they go, he's going to block you on Twitter. And you'd be like, what does that mean?
What does that
and you're
mean?
like, all right, well, let me start. All right, let me try to explain this to you. All right, first off, you know how phones work? All right, well, at some point, that's going to be like an internet. And then they don't need the wires anymore. And then, I don't know, dude. It's just your computer connects to other computers.
We're going to go to the members only show and we're going to take audience Q&A. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button right now? Subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, and on the front page of the website, we're going to have that members only show up in a couple of minutes. You don't want to miss it. Shout out to Good Ranchers for sponsoring our live event here and helping make all of this possible. Pick up your meat if you haven't already. We had the burgers, and I just got to say, it's like one of the best burgers I've ever had. So shout out goodranchers.com. We will have the show up in a few minutes. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Dave, do you want to shout anything out?
Part of the problem is my podcast. ComicDaveSmith.com is my website if you want to come see me do live stand-up comedy dates all across the country. At Comic Dave Smith on Twitter, at The Problem Dave Smith on Instagram. And just thanks to all you guys. Thanks to you, Tim, for having me on so many times, dude. I love this show. It's incredible what you built up.
Always good episodes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys boosting my signal and all that. So great work what you guys are doing. And thanks to all you guys for coming out tonight. You're the best.
Live studio audience.
I like it. It does almost, dude, I'll tell you, good, because there's such a big ceiling in here, it does almost sound like it was like I was like Carl Winslow, like, listen, Eddie, you can always tell me whatever you want. And they were like, yeah.
There you go.
No. Remember Family Matters? No, we don't do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember.
The 90s were great.
Whatever happened to the...
We'll get an applause and laughter signs next time. So whenever you make a joke, we'll light it up.
Yeah,
That's what Bill Maher has.
We won't tell you they're there, so you feel really good about yourself.
singing
Wow,
the Full
I'm
House.
crushing. That wasn't even a joke and they laughed. I'm crushing tonight.
Yeah. The Full House theme is what you started to sing.
You're right. You're right. I missed it. Hold on.
Newsman, the paperboy, the evening TV.
I will-
Libby, do you have anything to shout out?
Yeah, I'm Libby Emmons. Thanks for coming out tonight, you guys. You can check out everything we're doing at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com. We'd be glad to have you subscribe as well. Hannah Claire.
Oh, yeah. Guys, it's been awesome having you all here. It's definitely a cool change of pace. And I'm glad Dave is here, too. I'm Hannah Claire Brimelow. I'm a writer for scnr.com. That's Scanner News. You guys know where to follow us, at Timcast News. And I'm on the social medias, HCBrimelow on Twitter. Yeah, happy Super Tuesday. Sorry it wasn't that eventful.
It was just Tuesday. Just
Tuesday.
Turned out just another Tuesday. Ian Crossland, check me out on the internet, everywhere and anywhere. I love you. Great, good to see you guys. Let's do this again. Maybe next month.
I don't know if we have a camera for
We do.
Serge.
Do we have a Serge cam?
Nope. Okay,
No Serge cam.
Serge says to follow him. He's Serge.com and whatever. We'll see you all over at timcast.com in a few minutes. Thanks for hanging out.